All right. I call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's Board of Education for Tuesday, May 8th, 2018, and we will begin by rising to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Matsuoka.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos todos los padres, gusto de verlos. Tenemos los aparatos para interpretación en español. Creo que la mayoría de ustedes ya los tienen, pero si no los tienen, aquí están por las puertas dobles ahí atrás. Gracias.
Thank you. And headsets for the hearing impaired are available, so please indicate if you need one. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead with C5, announcement of closed session action. In closed session, I'm reporting out that there was a motion made for Dr. Elise Simmons to be the new principal for Santa Barbara High School. The motion was made by Ms. Parker. It was seconded by Mr. Paredes Ulloa, and it was a unanimous vote. Moving forward, we also had the announcement for the Director of Facilities and Operations. The motion was made by Ms. Parker for that to be Mr. Steve Vizzolini, and a second, Mr. Paredes Ulloa, followed through with the whole vote of the unanimous vote of the board for this position. And finally, the third position that we voted on was for Kathy Serrano for the Coordinator of After School and Extended Learning, ASEL. The motion was made by Ms. Parker and seconded by Mr. Paredes Ulloa. Again, a unanimous vote by the board. Moving forward, we have item C6, the Superintendent's Report. Mr. Matsuoka.
So I wanted to share with the community and with the board that a team of us from Adams Elementary, we get to go to Disneyland, but we didn't get to go in the park. And we were there for the California Distinguished School Award, and Adams was one of about 228 elementary schools that received an award. So hats off to Adams and the really great work for a long time. And we do want to appreciate Dr. Amy Alzina, who led Adams for so many years. It was great to hang out with the Adams teachers, current principal Kelly Fresh, and we got our picture taken with Tom Torlakson. At the same time, the district received an Exemplary District Award, and I think it's so appropriate that the award was given for two pieces, and it's part of our ELAC work. So we presented a model program around family engagement and our language access unit in our application. And the language access unit has been going for it's in the 5 to 8 year long category. So I'm amazed at our language access unit. It is such a powerful part of our district. The other part of our application was restorative approaches across our entire district. So Santa Barbara Unified as a district is a distinguished school district among all in the state of California, and that needs a little applause. So the flag of a California Distinguished School will fly above Adams Elementary and also the school district soon. So it's a great day.
Great, thank you. So this is now time for board comments. Do we have any board comments or? Yeah, Ms. Capps.
Well, along with you, I've been grateful to visit 3 more academies since our last meeting. Our academies offer such interesting enrichment and perspectives for our high school students, and so we were at VADA and also the Entrepreneurship Academy and Health Academy, and I just want to thank the staff and the teachers and the students for welcoming us and showing us what they're learning every day. It's very impressive. I think I just have a couple more, but it's also important, I think, that there's some miscommunication in the public that these, there isn't support for the academies, but I think that I can speak for myself. I have only just have interest and an intrigue and appreciation for, just as an example, the Health Academy and the niche that it's served to help with a nurses shortage here in Santa Barbara. So it was nice to be welcomed on campus. Thanks.
All right, and I'm just going to tag on to Ms. Capps. Yes, enjoying the learning more about the academies, but other programs as well. I attended the PETA meeting, Parents for Inclusion, Diversity, and Access at San Marcos High School, and I was very great to see the work that was being done by the parents in terms of really acknowledging some of the positive things that are going on, but also some of the challenges that are being faced. And so I appreciated being a part of that meeting, and I look forward to attending those in other schools. I also, both Ms. Capps and I also had a chance to visit the Franklin Service Center, and that was pretty amazing. We got to meet the director, Alejandro Gutierrez. She's the director. What an amazing center that provides for our community, not only just the school, but the community around the school. And it was such a great framework that I'm hoping that we can see how we can provide maybe other opportunities with other school sites for really welcoming the community and ensuring that families are getting what they need, the different services that are out there, but being actually coordinated by somebody who is a great liaison to the community. I also had a chance to attend the student presentation on Ethnic Studies Now at Dos Pueblos, and I was really impressed by the students' presentations, as well as there was a presentation on climate change, and there was one also on driverless cars, which was very intriguing as well. But so I was really it was great to just be in the classroom and hear the students and hear their passion. This was a passion focus of what they were really concerned about, a problem that they wanted to resolve, and so it was a great opportunity to be able to be there. We also are planning parents getting together to tour the Cuesta site to learn more about personalized learning. And so I would just like to make a statement that if there is an interest to learn more about it, I think I really welcome parents seeking to know more, because we can only, once we're educated on the different programs that are around, then we can certainly be able to make judgments and decisions about the various programs. So I'm really impressed with the parents who've come forward to me to just find out and learn more about these different programs. So I look forward to anyone else who would like to reach out to me in that case. And I'll be visiting Mad Academy in the next couple of weeks. So anyway, I've been busy. I think we've all been busy. But anyway, I just wanted to say that it's not just programs, but it's also just being able to get out there, get into the schools, and sort of see what's actually happening across the board. So I really have to say that I'm impressed with our district. I think we deserve a flag, or two, or three. So moving forward, board comments from that. We're going to move to public comments on non-agenda matters within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education.
Okay, so the first speaker we have is Erica Dixon, followed by Patty Zilstra. I apologize if I mispronounced your name ahead of time.
Hi, thank you. I have parent Andy Sutter with me as well. We might not make it tonight to action agenda item F14, which is why we're speaking now. So thank you for taking our comments now. We just want to thank you for your response around the issues of school safety, and we would like to encourage you to vote yes to approve a permanent student resource deputy at San Marcos High School. And now Andy has a little case study for you, which is representative of the feedback that we're getting from students and parents.
Hi. So I just wanted to let you know I drive a carpool of 6 girls to school, and so we talk about things in the carpool, and they're so happy to have the resource officer there. They've noticed when they've been there, they've seen him in the halls. I think there have been some different officers there at the beginning, but they appreciate it so much. It makes them feel so good, and I just want to make sure that you know that the freshman girls at that school really value this. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Patty Zylstra, and I attended a Distinguished Service Awards last week at San Marcos High School, where many teachers, parents, staff, and Ed Barons were all given awards with their accomplishments listed and honored. And I am utterly astounded and disappointed that you have removed Ed Barons as principal of San Marcos. There's absolutely no legitimate reason for his dismissal. You're free to hide behind it's a personnel issue matter or lack of academic opportunity if you wish. But this brings to the forefront the lack of research of the information available on the Santa Barbara Unified School District website. To name a few areas of improvement, ELA improvement scores, San Marcos High School, 62%. California, 48%. Economically disadvantaged groups of ELA improvement scores, San Marcos, 46%. Santa Barbara, 33%. Dos Pueblos, 43%. This is astounding. The dropout rate at San Marcos is 2.2%. The district, 6.3%. In California, 9.7%. This doesn't look like a school or a school district that is 10 years behind the times, as Super Matsuoka believes. I've been told that there are no qualified applicants for the new San Marcos principal position. What a complete mess you've all created at San Marcos. You already have a perfectly qualified principal who happens to be extraordinary at his job. The mess you have created at San Marcos shows that you're not good stewards of our tax dollars or managing this part of our high school. I have issues with the superintendent and his plans to rid the schools of the traditional teaching models for the untested Summit model program, among other things, but ultimately the decision to remove Ed Barons rests with you all. You created this mess at San Marcos, and it was completely unnecessary. I'm baffled that you didn't have the foresight to see what ramifications your horrendous decision to remove a well-loved and accomplished principal that Ed Barons is. You should have done your homework, and you should have expected everything that is happening now. The students deserve better, the teachers, staff, and administration deserves better, and the community of Santa Barbara deserves better. You have had an ample opportunity to correct this atrocious error in removing Ed Barons as principal, and you failed to do so. Again, you are solely responsible for making this complete mess at San Marcos. Ultimately, all the children will suffer, and it's
30
your fault.
seconds.
Swallow your pride and fix this situation. Reinstate a principal that never should have been removed. And what you have all done to our Santa Barbara community is truly sad. Thank you.
Lisa Lee, to be followed by Ben Vigil.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Lee, and I have 3 kids. 2 went to San Marcos, and 1 is a junior at San Marcos High School right now. So a couple weeks ago, we got a message saying that there is not a qualified principal for San Marcos High School. So I was thinking, I don't know what the procedure is if there is no principal. Who's going to run the school? So why don't you, that Ed Barron, be the interim principal, and then, while you're looking for a new principal? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ben Vigil. I'm a special education teacher at Santa Barbara High School. This is my first year in the district, and I do love it here. I've just moved here from New Mexico, and so I'm excited to be here. The one thing I do want to talk about is the use of Measure J bond funding for repairs for the schools. We would like the board to consider the use of Measure J funding to support the life-centered classrooms at Santa Barbara High School. It's our classroom for students with intellectual disabilities, and they are in need of more accessible and a functional classroom. Currently, we have 2 classrooms with no accessible ramps for our students who use wheelchairs. The closest elevator is located outside and does not provide access for our students to the classroom without assistance. The way our classrooms are set up, there's 2 inaccessible ramps and a staircase, and the elevator is outside, and you'd still have to go down the ramps and the stairs to get to our classrooms. In our program, we promote inclusion and independence for all students, regardless of ability. In addition to their academic goals, students in our program also learn valuable social skills, employability skills, personal care skills, and how to access our community. One classroom is equipped with a washer and dryer, stove, small appliances, and 2 functioning sinks. However, the classroom has additional 4 non-functioning sinks and a non-functioning stove. We have had rats and rat droppings in our room. We had a leak in our ceiling for months that was only recently repaired, and that leak actually was leaking onto our counter where we had students working. While we're doing our due diligence to maintain the cleanliness of the classroom to the best of our ability, we do feel that the upgrades in the facilities are needed. As our program grows, we currently have 21 students, and the next year we're projecting 25 to 30 students. We have to look forward to the future and prepare more functional and appropriate classrooms in a safe and secure environment for our students. In addition to serving our 9th through 12th graders, we also support our students who are 18 to 22 years old who continue to get special education services through their certificate of completion. With only 2 certified teachers in 1 classroom that has access to the independent living resources, we believe it is imperative that Santa Barbara High School life-centered classrooms receive the resources and accessibility to a functional classroom and curriculum.
30 seconds.
We prepare our students for life after school, and due to our diverse group of students, we do need access to a variety of resources, which some of the other people can talk to about what we want for our classrooms. And if you've ever worked with some of our students or had interactions with some of our students, you will understand how imperative that including them in everything that we do in the community, how great it is, because they are so joyful, they're loving, they're accepting of everybody. So I encourage you, if you ever do get a chance, go hang out with them at Special Olympics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Carmen Esquivel and Lisa Foote, followed by Lisa Foote.
Hello, my name is Carmen Esquivel. I'm here to talk about the funds of Measure J and how they can be used. I have a daughter in the 10th grade at Santa Barbara High School in the moderate to severe special day class. I'm here today asking the board to consider renovating the special day class to bring it up to code to compliance and to really consider it a priority project for the 2018 summer break. I second what the speakers followed, although I did not know about the rat droppings. That is very concerning, considering my daughter's coming home with gastrointestinal issues now, and it just made me think what could be wrong. It's truly unfortunate that in this modern world, we are still out of compliance with the Americans with Disability Act. The Americans for Disability Act covers anyone who has a physical, sensory, cognitive, or mental disability of any level of severity. In a school setting, the ADA covers students, parents, and employees. The Americans for Disability Act covers academics, extracurricular activities, and athletics. The ADA also covers off-campus activities. Title II of this section of the ADA is the most applicable to public schools. Local governments and states cannot discriminate against individuals because of a disability. Public school districts must provide a free education in an integrated setting where possible to students with disabilities and make accommodations for the individual's needs. Students with disabilities on a daily basis, my daughter has to walk through 2 flights of stairs to reach the nearest restrooms to have access to a handicapped stall wide enough to get the necessary assistance from her aides, not to forget the challenges of those bound to a wheelchair face on a daily basis who need full body assistance. Accessible design of the ADA standards of accessibility designs incorporate 7 principles. equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and intuitive use, perceptible information, tolerance for error, low physical effort, and size and space for approach and use into the design of a space or a facility. There is the conceiving of an idea, and then there is the implementation, the sweat and the hard work.
30 seconds.
That transferable of the idea into the minds of others, and then we will see the idea through. It's not a question of if, but a matter of when. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the speakers. After Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Foote. I'm an occupational therapist here working at the district. I've been an occupational therapist for 12 years, 10 at the schools, and 9 of those in Santa Barbara County, and 4 here at the district. So I've been working at that classroom in the transition, the special ed class in the high school program for 4 years. And what's basically, I'm in support of, yes, we really need to renovate and upgrade that program's facilities. What's very interesting and ironic to me is that actually we're housed in the old home economics labs, which we like to make fun of, oh, home ec, that's so passé, but, you know, we actually need that in this day and age. So we're in the old home ec labs, so basically we have the footprint of what we need. So as an OT, I help people with their occupations, and this is, you know, you need realistic labs and realistic settings to be teaching and practicing realistically and with meaning. So short list of things that we would want and need would be accessible and clean restrooms, as we've spoken about, fully functional and accessible kitchen. That would be adjustable counter heights and have all the appliances that students would need to practice those skills. Eating, social, leisure group area, a laundry area that's accessible that would have all the components of practicing all the steps of laundry. A maker activity area where students can practice, do projects, and think about doing cottage industries, maybe do overlap between VEDA and MAD programs. That would be great. I think if we had a lab that could include the gen ed students and have collaborative learning for both, it would be invaluable. And even the same at San Marcos with the Health Academy would be great too. What else? Then we would have an academic study area with a technology station, so dedicated area for the students to be using tech and printing. A lot of this kind of stuff gets done by paraeducators and teachers versus having our students actually do it themselves. It's just easier for the paras to do it because it's just not set up for function. An open area to do movement embedded in the routine. Obviously a teacher para office area, proper heating and cooling for the classrooms, and a big thing is the fully accessible and functional student store. So right now we have one, but we have problems with the food storage due to the rats. It's not accessible. It's in a classroom. We'd like to have it out, you know, facing out of the hallway.
30 seconds.
So everybody can use it in a wheelchair or no. It would be easier for the gen ed students to access the store as well. And also a mobile coffee cart. So basically, in a nutshell, it's just creating real life, meaningful occupations and tasks for us to do our teaching in. And we would love that. And we have a perfect place for it to happen. We just need it to be upgraded and ADA and all that. And exciting to think about it. So thank you for considering.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for all of our public comments. We're going to move forward now with DA, acceptance of donations for May 8th, 2018.
Move to accept with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And it passes unanimously. Moving now on to general consent items. Are there any items, fellow board members, that you would like to pull? Oh, really?
I will move to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. All right. Moving on to our action agenda. We will move to action agenda number 1, board action on student discipline, Education Code 48918, case number 201718-25.
In the case of 201718-25, stipulated agreement, move approval, expulsion with enforcement suspended, 1 school year, which ends January 2019.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And it passes unanimously. Moving to action agenda item 2, board action on student discipline, Education Code 48918, case number 201718-33.
In the case of 201718-33, move approval, expulsion with enforcement suspended, 1 school year, which ends January 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Item 3, board action on student discipline, Education Code 48918, case number 201718-34.
In the case of 201718-34, move approval, full expulsion, 1 school year, which ends January 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Moving forward to item number 4, board action on interdistrict transfer appeal, Education Code 46600-46611, case number 2018-19-01.
In the case of 2018-19-1, move approval of transfer, interdistrict transfer appeal.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Item number 5, board action on interdistrict transfer appeal, Education Code 46600-46611, case number 2018-19-02.
In the case of 2018-19-2, move approval, interdistrict transfer appeals.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Moving on to item 6, board action on interdistrict transfer appeal, Education Code 46600-46611, case number 2018-19-03.
In the case of 2018-19-3, move approval of interdistrict transfer appeals.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. And it passes unanimously. Moving on to action agenda item number 7, adoption of resolution 2017/18-42, declaring the week of May 20th through 26th classified school employees week in the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Mr. Matsuoka.
So up on the screen is a resolution recognizing the contributions of our classified employees. And, I mean, I'll just share my experience as a school principal. It is the classified employees who run the school. They know where everything is. They keep schools running. In fact, it's the classified employees that often have to train a new principal about how things work. And so our classified employees are, it's beyond essential. We couldn't run our schools without them. So it's very appropriate that we as a leadership team and district board pass this resolution.
All right, board, any comments? Ms. Parker?
I, completely agree with everything that Mr. Matsuoka has said, and I will move to approve Resolution 2017-18-42.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Moving on to action agenda item 8, approval of resolution 2017/2018-45, approving the guaranteed maximum price, authorizing the contractor to proceed with construction and adopting the plans and specifications for the Harding University Partnership School Multipurpose Building Renovation Project. Mr. Hetjank.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka, board members. Scheduled with Measure I renovations, Measure J reservations for elementary school. We have 4 multi-purpose rooms on our schedule, 2 for this summer and 2 for next summer. Harding is one of our ones for this summer. On the consent agenda, you approved the plans and specifications, and now I'm asking you to approve the guaranteed maximum sum. We have Division of the State Architect approval, and the contractor will be given his notice of award following the adoption of this resolution, and then he can get his paperwork in and get a notice to proceed, and we hope to have this project started at the beginning of summer. It will probably disturb the school a little bit towards the end of the summer. They may not be 100% complete, but we're working with the principal on the schedule.
Thank you. Board comments, questions? Do we have a motion?
I will move approval of Resolution 2017-2018-45.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Moving forward to item 9, approval of Resolution 2017/2018-46, approving the guaranteed maximum price, authorizing the contractor to proceed with construction and adopting the plans and specifications for the Roosevelt Elementary School Multipurpose Building Renovation Project. Mr. Hetjunk.
Thank you. Same scenario, only this project was a little bit under budget, so there is some good news. Hopefully this will create some budget space for other Measure J projects, and again, we ask your approval of the guaranteed maximum price.
Great, well, we always like good news. Any other comments or questions? All right, a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to action agenda item 10, adoption of resolution 2017/18-49, recognizing May 30th, 2018 as the Employee Appreciation Day. Mr. Matsuoka.
So this is a month where we recognize all of our employees. This one's broad. It covers all of our employees. And I think certainly our school board knows, and for the public, our biggest resource is our people. Our biggest part of our budget is the human beings, because teaching and really helping families raise kids, it's a very high-touch environment. And so this recognizes our classified staff, who we've already appreciated, our teachers, and we're going to recognize them with the next resolution. But it's really every employee in our district that has a part in teaching and raising the next generation of our future workers. So it's with that I present this resolution to the governing board.
Board? Ms. Parker.
Are there any details yet on what is going to be happening on Employee Appreciation Day?
I'll have to check with my HR team. I'll put on my HR hat for a moment, and I'll look, and Ms. Ppic is in the back, so let's put that on our weekly project list.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion?
I'll go ahead and move approval of Resolution 2017-18-49.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Moving on to action agenda item number 11, adoption of resolution 2017/18-50, recognizing May 7th through 11th, 2018 as Teacher Appreciation Week. Mr. Matsuoka.
How many in this room remember the name of your kindergarten teacher? Isn't that amazing? Mine was Mrs. Winkler. And I remember seeing her out in the community long after she retired. And she, Carrie, do you remember me? I looked at her and go, I have no idea who you are. I was your kindergarten teacher. How many of you remember, I don't know, who was your like a favorite high school teacher? And then who was that person? And so, I mean, the influence of teachers is lifelong. It really is. I mean, we were all touched by teachers throughout our K-12 experience. And I would say that's regardless of country and culture. I mean, teachers have an influence in every nation. And I've been the beneficiary of having been a teacher for 17 years. I run into my students almost like every year, and they come up to me, Mr. Matsuoka, do you remember me? And I look at them and I go, I'm sorry, I wish I did. And I have to ask them, okay, in what context was it, and so to see the students that I've had grow up and contribute to society is one of the most gratifying things for me personally. So our teachers, I tell you, teaching is super hard work. Our teachers go home every day exhausted, and they get to summer and they collapse because the demands on our teachers is so high. So we're incredibly grateful for our teachers, the contact and support that they have for all of our students. So it's with that I present this resolution to the board.
Mr. Ishmael
Take two.
Paredes Ulloa. Go for it.
I just want to echo what Mr. Matsuoka said. Even in my short time as a student teacher, doing a full takeover for 4 classes in our district, I still run into students on the street. It's weird that they're old enough to drink now. But, running into them and going, hey, Mr. Yu, and nobody calls me Mr. Yu anymore. That's a bygone era, but it is powerful to see that impact. It is powerful to see where those students have come up. And again, my student teaching ended almost 10 years ago, but it's still to see them growing up, to see them making their own lives. And of course, I have my teachers that I remember very fondly, so it is with great pleasure that I move to accept this resolution.
All right, can I just say something real quick? Sure. Before you do that, only because in my experience as a teacher, and I just want to say, the idea of having a week is so fabulous, just to acknowledge it, but like with any job, it's great that you just say it anytime. We talk about focusing on things for weeks or just for that one day, but I would say it not only for the teachers, but for the classified staff and the certified staff, that just a comment, a thank you, a positive note. We know and we do hear about the things that are challenges for everyone, but it's nice to hear periodically those wonderful comments that just come out of the blue for no reason. So I would just like to acknowledge that, and also all of our teachers, because we are very, very lucky to have them in this district.
I'll just add, I know the resolution is important, but I think there's a lot of activities happening this week in honor of our teachers. I know at Roosevelt we're making lunch for them tomorrow, so I hope that this is not, the resolution is important, but our actions are even more important. Thanks.
All right, and I would actually prefer to call you Mr. Yu, but I will say Mr. Paredes Ulloa made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And it passes unanimously. All right, moving on to action agenda item number 12, approval of proposal from USA Shade and Fabric Structures for shade structure installation at La Cuesta High School. Mr. Hetjunk.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka, board members. La Cuesta High School is scheduled to have a shade structure installed as part of their Measure I bond fund upgrades. And this proposal is for that shade structure itself and the installation. Also, as part of the DSA approval process, we need to make some changes to some restroom door swings, some exit gates out of the play area, and some signage and tactile little bumps that they have at accessible parking spaces. I used the word minor accessibility upgrades in my memo to you and told you that would be on the next board agenda. It will be on the next board agenda, but minor may be a little misleading because they're going to equate to about twice the cost of the shade structure to do the other requirements. So I just wanted to, I kind of backpedal on my use of the word minor.
Thank you. Board, any comments, questions?
Well, I'll just add, I know with our temperatures rising every year that these are more and more important, so shade is good. Thanks.
And I'll move approval of the proposal from USA Shade and Fabric Structures for shade structure installation at La Cuesta.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 13, approval of Memorandum of Understanding between Santa Barbara Unified School District, University of California, Santa Barbara, and Santa Barbara County, Selpa, for commitment to hire a Ppic doctoral student psychologist intern, and we'll have Dr. Wagonet.
Good evening, Dr. Reed and the board. Bring to you MOU between the proposed MOU between Santa Barbara Unified and UCSB. This is a continuation, or we're proposing a continuation of this agreement where we have a school psychologist intern who serves in our system full-time. It's a $35,000 contract, $30,000 of that going to the psychologist intern and $5,000 to UCSB in indirect costs. We have found this to be very beneficial to have that level of interns serve in the district, but also having for $35,000 to be able to add a school psychologist Meg is nodding, is very helpful as well. And so at this point, I'll take any questions that you have.
Ms. Parker?
I just wanted to clarify, so we have had this role filled for 1 year, and we're moving on to
And
two?
it would be a new intern.
It would be a new intern, but the same position?
Same position.
So
yes.
it's been successful?
Yes.
Okay, that was my question, thanks.
Mr. Paredes Ulloa?
I was just wondering, is this UCSB the only organization or the only institution of higher ed that we have this agreement with? I was wondering if we ever connect with Antioch, for instance, or any other college.
For the school psychologist position, yes, because they do the training in school psychology. Yes, but of course, we pair up with all the colleges and universities for their various credentialing programs.
All right. Then, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 14, approval of school resource deputy, San Marcos High School. Dr. Wagonet, come back. Come back.
I wasn't paying attention. All right, so coming back to you, the item that we discussed April 24th, the placement of school resource deputy at San Marcos High School. At our last meeting, the board requested that we work with the Sheriff's Department to investigate this role, and I bring to you the outcome of that. Mr. Matsuoka and I met with Commander Kelly Moore on April 17th, 2018 to negotiate details of a 2018-19 contract. We brought what you shared in the last meeting, started that process. One thing we really emphasized, and I had brought this up when we had our report last time, that we really need someone 5 days a week. And 4 days a week has been the norm. And fortunately, they are willing to work that out and work out the schedule that we want. We talked about that availability to participate in trainings that are held, professional development events that are held on campus, especially around issues of bias and restorative approaches and social emotional learning, mental health, et cetera. We talked about consultation on hiring and what that would look like, and then asking them to also provide public safety trainings around issues that parents and students, staff could benefit from. So while we're still in progress on the contractual details and working out the nuts and bolts of the specifics, such as the 5 days and specific hours, the Sheriff's Department did bring us the total cost. It's $212,000. It's important to note that that's a 12-month position, and we would be funding a full 12-month position, not a school year position. Mr. Matsuoka and I discussed that with Commander Moore, and I think it's definitely one of those things that we would need to work out the details on, but some of the things that we talked about, we do have summer school that occurs, and we have upwards 400, 500 students taking summer school at a time, so a high school never truly shuts down, and so that need could be there. There are also events going on, such as summer band practice, football, et cetera, cheerleaders, so summer life is happening. So, but also looking at the school safety planning and training, being able to run tabletop exercises around safety and those sorts of things. So we'll need to work out the details of what the deputy would be doing and what their job would look like from mid-June to mid-August. So with that, your questions.
Ms. Parker?
I really appreciate the work that's gone forward with this and the fact that you, brought up all the points that we'd brought up in the board meetings and the members of the public had brought up. And so I'm happy to move forward with this, and I certainly will vote to approve this for the 18-19 school year. I do have questions about this summer piece and this full-time piece. And so I guess my first question is, are the other two SROs on duty at their sites during the summer?
No, they are not.
And,
So let me back up.
okay.
So Officer Kirk, who's our new SRO in Santa Barbara, has reminded me that we say school's getting out, and she said, yes, school's getting out, which means they're out. The students are out. If we remember what summer was like, it's very active. And so, no, they're not working necessarily from the high school, but if there are issues at the high school, it would be Officer Kirk who would respond.
Yes.
So, but Deputy Hendricks, it's a similar situation where he has a different schedule, but would respond to any issues that occur at Goleta Valley or Dos Pueblos.
So why is this a...
As it was explained to us, it's because the Sheriff's Department absolutely does not have any funding for the position, and they cannot fund, they have to hire their deputies full-time, and so they have to hire a person to do this for 12 months of the year.
So I think in the long run, I feel like trying to find work, I could see that maybe if there were an agreement that this person could work cross-jurisdiction in the sense that not only work at our county sites, but also come in across and help with, do trainings in the city. I mean, if it were a district-wide SRO for the summer, I could see that maybe that there are some, that could be, full-time and make some sense. But I have concerns about it, and I feel like that it is probably an inappropriate agreement in the long run. And again, I've said before that I really strongly feel like the county needs to be part of this discussion, and it's probably a supervisor discussion, because in the long run, the SRO in the summer is really working for the Sheriff's Department and for the full county and not just for our sites, unless we mesh out some funky agreement. So that's my long-term concern. In the short run, I absolutely will support it for the 18-19 school year, but I hope that we can come to a better structure in the future.
Yes.
Ms. Capps?
Thank you. I had questions along the same line, in terms of funding. So first of all, I think this is great, and the way in which we moved quickly is appreciated. In fact, Dr. Reed and I happened to meet the person who is in place now, and he went to San Marcos and was in the band, and it was just lovely to connect and to see how excited he is to be on campus, as expected. But I do have, I do think it's important for the public discussion to review how we got here, and that it really was a funding issue, that the county used to fund this position and then didn't. And so we are coming to the rescue essentially here, budget-wise. So I imagine you can't get too much into the sort of where we are with the county, but by approving this for the year, I do think that this, echoing to some degree what Ms. Parker has said, this is funding a position in the sheriff's office, and so I would hope that negotiations or conversations with the county as to who bears that budgetary responsibility could continue.
Yes, completely agreed. And as noted in the last presentation in Santa Maria, they are funding a police officer and a sheriff's deputy up there. I can contact them and find out what they're doing, what the sheriff's doing with them during the summer as well.
And I like just to add one more point, I do like the notion that this could potentially be, especially in this coming year where we are funding the position, someone who is involved in our school safety task force in some regard, and to really be, I know you rely on the other law enforcement for that kind of advice already, but maybe perhaps more formally, because again, we are that we are paying for this position, and so there's more of a potentially a holistic approach to the district by this person.
Exactly, and that's what I imagine is we actually have interviews upcoming for the school safety coordinator and having the SRD work with that individual, and so there'll be planning between now and the 1st of July to have them working together. So
great, thank you.
Ms. Sims-Moten.
First of all, I agree with it, and I'm glad that you have come forth on this, and I agree with my colleagues. The question I have is, has it always been fully funded by the county?
that would be, I do not know how their funding broke down. I mean, I don't know how they broke down the funding, and if the county funded 10 months, and then if that person was put, say, on just a patrol schedule, I'm not sure, but that's a question definitely we can ask Commander Moore.
Okay, and then just to follow up to that, is there a possible way to share the cost?
With the Sheriff's Department? No, they've been very clear on that they do not have the funding. My understanding is that their funding this year is even tighter than it was last year, so they have additional cuts.
Okay, thank you.
So I agree with everyone here in terms of the need and the importance of continuing with the SRD. But I also agree with the challenges of the financing. And so I would also say that we want to put their feet to the fire, so to speak, to really try to see what we can negotiate so that we're not carrying the complete burden. I do also want to know, and I would hope that we could get updates on the trainings that Officer Moore will be partaking in the district around implicit bias and the anti-bias work. So I think it would be really important for us to hear about those when they're happening and be updated in the work. Also, I think we talked about restorative justice program, and just in my conversation with the undersheriff, it was made very explicit that any trainings that we wish to have them, whomever took on that role, that they would be willing and able to do that. So I'm hoping that we'll get continuous updates with regards to that, just so that we're kept abreast of that. And also, like what Ms. Kapp said, it was really kind of cool to see him strolling around. Very nice guy and just very friendly, very just like I just felt like he was somebody that I could go up to and just talk to. And I think that's what we want. We want somebody that the students feel comfortable around. There was no stiffness whatsoever. It was just like a cool guy who just happened to be just a happy person and had a love for San Marcos. So we couldn't have asked for, I think, a better person in that role currently.
Well, I'm glad to hear that Deputy Hunter and I graduated from San Marcos together in 1984, so I've known him for a long time.
So he's part of the family.
Yes.
All right, so do we have a motion? Mr. Paredes Ulloa.
Leave me out.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I just wanted to echo what everyone said about the budget piece. That really, I have like 10 questions on this, so I'll erase my notes now. But going back to what Dr. Reed said about not just the training, but also just exposure of the SRD to different programs. You know, being able to have them sit in on be the presentation or a talking in class or ELAC meeting or, just PTA, any of these really vital presentations, meetings where the families, the parents, the students are really tied into the school and expressing concerns and questions or, just reflections on the campus, I think would be huge. It might not be a formal training, like let's say like something from Just Communities, but it is still training. And so I would like us to consider that as a huge piece of their onboarding, but also their continuous integration into the community there at the school and district-wide if they are going to go jurisdiction-wide, just so that they have a better feel, they have a better sense, because I feel like, an SRD who knows not only the students but knows the parents will be a lot more effective in working with our families and our students.
Absolutely, having that connection to the San Marcos community, and I think of Officer Gutierrez, who the East Side is his beat, and for Deputy Hunter, San Marcos High School and that surrounding area is his beat, and being a part of that community and being involved can only, it's important that all members of the San Marcos community know the SRD and be acquainted and feel familiar and have him be approachable. So, thank you.
I'll move approval of the school resource deputy, San Marcos High School.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
I think we might be able to get
So moving forward with item number 15, second reading and final approval of BP 4119.11 sexual harassment. Mr. Matsuoka.
The board asked us to revise, there was a specific sentence that was, it used the word others, which was not very clear. So we consulted with our legal counsel, and Brian, if you can scroll down to, it's kind of at the bottom of the first page. Yeah, the clean one. Whoop, back up. Keep going, number 2. So the language that we came up with was to be, it's pretty inclusive. I mean, certainly our employees, interns, volunteers. I think we captured almost all the groups, but then even the caveat to whom the policy may apply. I mean, if there's a one-off person that applies, then they have to sign the agreement. So we feel like with our attorney's revisions that this captures the desire of the board to clarify others. So comments, questions from the board?
Ms. Capps.
No, that's great, to make it as airtight as possible, and then the other changes were to change some of the places where it said shall to must, and I knew that we had done this last year, and so I actually checked in our minutes, and last year in September, we had changed the sentence that's currently up. The superintendent or designee must take all actions. So that had read shall, and it's really important as we see what's unfolding all around us in the news that that inaction is complicit action, in my opinion and view. And so the way that this board policy currently reads, there's only one shall left, which I just wanted to, I'm okay with it, but I just did want to flag it, and it's just about the evaluation. So it doesn't have any, it's about the evaluation of the process, of the policy rather. And I'm fine with that, but I do just want to flag that the word shall does give you a window. We've closed those windows everywhere else except for that one sentence at the bottom of this screen, which I think is fine, but did want to give the history that we had done. Some of removed one of the shalls last year, and now I think we've removed all of the relevant ones that really make this policy as airtight as possible, so that it's clear that supervisors must report when any of their employees are being accused of this kind of inappropriate behavior. Thanks.
Ms. Parker.
I concur with Ms. Capps' remarks totally. So thank you, and I appreciate that you brought that up last time too. And given that it's 7:30, I'm going to go ahead and move approval of BP 4119.11.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. We are now going to move to G, report discussion agenda. This item is time certain. We're promptly starting at 7:30. Yes, we are. We're not going to have our break until after this one, and we'll then move back to number 16. But we're going to now go to the report discussion agenda item, which is the District English Learner Advisory Committee recommendations to the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education, Dr. Ramirez and Larios Horton. Ms. Larios Horton.
Well, good evening, board. It's a pleasure to be with you all here tonight. Sorry, it's been a long day. It's a very, very special time of year when we get to hear from our DLAC. Right before turning it over to Ms. Maria Larios Horton, our Director of English Learner and Parent Engagement Programs, I'd like to just make a couple of comments regarding this particular group of volunteer parents. First and foremost, this DLAC subcommittee has dedicated over 20 hours of development to these recommendations for you tonight. Another point is that they have aligned the input. In years past, we have received this report in June, and it seemed a little bit, it was great, it was a great audience, it was a great opportunity, but it seemed a little bit out of step with our more traditional budget end-of-year timelines, and so we moved it up to May, which only made a sense of urgency that much greater. And finally, we are going to be presenting tonight in Spanish. So even though all of the materials are available in a bilingual format, I invite you to use your headset if necessary, and to those in the audience as well. And on a personal note, I just want to thank these parents. I want to thank Ms. Maria Larios Horton for her dedication to this process. She has been a tremendous addition to our team, to our district culture, in a very short period of time. It's just caught on 100%. And to our parents, let's go.
Entonces, para todos los padres, I want to appreciate you, and I want to say thank you for your efforts and for your dedication, for all of your support, not just today, but throughout many years. Bueno, entonces con eso le paso la palabra a la señora María Larios Horton. Good afternoon, Dr. Reed, members of the board, Mr. Matsuoka, cabinet members, and guests. One of the principal responsibilities of the DLAC is to present recommendations to the Board of Education with regards to programs that serve students who are English learners. As part of this responsibility, the DLAC formed a subcommittee in which they took the responsibility of revising the recommendations that were made in 2017 and 2018. And they developed the recommendations for 2018-2019. The subcommittee presented those recommendations to the DLAC with the purpose of giving them information in order to provide input from all the ELACs at the schools. So tonight, we have the subcommittee from the DLAC who will present to you the recommendations for 2018-2019. It's a pleasure for me to introduce to you the subcommittee: Laura Gomez, co-president; Sergio Naveda, co-president; Gabriel Dorado, the DLAC secretary; Beto Gallegos, the representative to the DLAC from Cleveland; Gloria Hernandez, the past president; Rodrigo Melgar, the parliamentary; Gloria Sotelo, representative from La Cuesta Continuation High School; and Marina Zarate from La Colina Junior High School. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sergio Naveda, and I am a co-president from the DLAC, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here with all of you. And tonight, we would like to present the 25 recommendations that we've been working on. And like Dr. Ramirez said, we've been working on them for a very short amount of time, but with a lot of dedication, many hours of work. And so these 25 recommendations, really, we put a lot of effort into them and a lot of work. But we have a purpose with this. We want to work for children and young people in this county and in this country. And so with these 25 recommendations, we've divided them into 21 recommendations that are already in progress. One of them is about to be implemented, and 3 new recommendations. So this for us is very important that you may consider it so that we can put this into effect. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here and for giving us the opportunity to present. Like Sergio said, out of the 25 recommendations, we will present 12 out of those 25. And these are made up of 8 that were created last year, but they were modified, and 1 recommendation that is still to be implemented, plus 3 new recommendations. So we will only talk about 12 due to the limited amount of time. And out of these 12 recommendations were selected by the members of the committee because we saw ourselves in these recommendations, either through our experience or something that we've seen. So we will present them to you in the order that they're shown on the screen. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Marina Zarate, and I am a member of the DLAC subcommittee. And this evening, I will be presenting to you recommendation number 1. And here, we stress the importance of monitoring the number of ELs enrolled in and successfully completing advanced and honors classes. So this recommendation spoke to me because actually I have a lot more questions about it now than answers. But I know that a lot of parents, just like myself, have a lot of questions and a lot of, concerns about, are they being monitored? This is one of the recommendations that is being implemented. But right now, we haven't seen a big impact in our students. And what's the purpose of this recommendation? Who can guarantee that our students are receiving the same amount of access to these advanced classes and honors classes as other students? So I am here today because I would like to see a change. I would like to see our work reflected in our children's education. I would like to see more students who are English learners in these rigorous courses, and I would like for them to receive the same opportunities so that they can enter the academies and they can graduate with really good grades, and that they have the option to attend prestigious universities without having to go to city college to complete their requirements that they weren't able to take in high school. So the statistics that we reviewed during our meetings, for me, it felt frustrating because they don't represent the effort that we invest in our children's education. Student participation in some of these rigorous classes and advanced courses and some of the science courses, engineering, and all of the academies is very minimal or non-existent. And so we need to really look at these statistics to look at the purpose and the importance of this recommendation. And so now moving on to number 2, here in this recommendation, I would like to share with you all the interest to continue strengthening the role of the DLAC with the Board of Education. It's important that we build strong bonds so that we continue to support our students and in their education. And I firmly believe, as a mother of 4 children in this district, that communication is one of the keys to success. Thank you for giving me the time to present these recommendations to you. All right, well, I'm going to talk about recommendation number 6. And this one refers to training of site administrators in the district with regards to the roles and functions and responsibilities of their ELACs. I'd like to let you all know that it's important that the training that is offered to ELACs be by district representatives that are actually trained to train parents that form the ELACs. Currently, this is not happening, and this is not happening adequately at schools. Because in schools, not all of them, but schools currently give a training of 1 hour only at the beginning of the school year, and there is no follow-up. And that's why the members of the committees largely don't know their functions. And it's a shame that they don't know that the manual exists, because that's one of the main tools that the members of the committee should have since the beginning of the year during their first training. However, some of them, and we've seen them in our meetings that we've had here with the DLAC, they've expressed that they don't even know that a manual exists, that they haven't received it, and that many times they don't even know why they're present at the meeting. Sometimes they don't feel comfortable to ask questions or to make comments because they don't even know the function of their role in that committee. And so with all of this, you can see that it's not possible for the members of the ELAC committee will be able to give some kind of recommendation to their principal. How are they going to be able to give suggestions with regards to programs and services that our students need if they themselves don't even have the knowledge of what the function of the ELAC is, right? So that's why I would like to stress that the schools are not giving the importance that the ELAC committee deserves as other committees receive. And I myself have seen that ELACs are not as relevant at schools. Like, we don't hear a whole lot about them. They don't really advertise their meetings. They don't motivate parents to attend those meetings. So that's something that I wanted to share. And also what the importance of this recommendation is. Another recommendation is number 2, and this one is a new one. And this one, it refers to monitoring the progress that reclassified students are making. And so here the same thing is happening. After students are reclassified, we're supposed to monitor them with a minimum of like 2 to 4 years. However, like, parents don't really know what kind of monitoring is supposed to be happening. So we don't receive any kind of specific report where we can see that the student is advancing or is maybe getting behind. Like, we see the grades and we can see that maybe students are having difficulty in their classes, but this type of monitoring that we're talking about, like I said, we don't have any kind of assurance that the school is monitoring those students after they're reclassified. And so, as a mother, and like many other parents here, we trust that you at the district are going to help us so that these recommendations will not just stay on paper, but for them to really be implemented in schools, for schools to be accountable, so that we can see what's here on paper is really happening in schools. But currently, what we're seeing on paper is actually not happening at the schools. The opposite is happening. And I'm sorry if I use this word, but in some places, the ELAC is actually not functioning adequately. It's just a front. And this really makes parents feel like they're not motivated because they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do. But if the school motivates parents and trains parents and gives the parents the tools that are necessary, I know that parents will be able
to offer the information that the school needs. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gabriel Dorado, and I'm going to speak about recommendation number 7. So this is a recommendation. This recommendation talks about the system for monitoring the compliance of all ELECs. And this recommendation also talks about the training for parents in order to promote more participation. But we see that in schools, there's not a whole lot of participation. The ELECs are not formed properly. So in this recommendation, we're asking for the training. Let's continue the training to all parents, like the MALDEF classes, the PIDA, Padres Adelante. Those classes are very helpful for parents to understand the system here in the U.S., the educational system, because it's a very complicated system and it's difficult to understand. There's a whole lot of requirements that we need to understand. So if we want to continue promoting parent participation, then we need to give them the training. I'm also going to talk about a new recommendation. This new recommendation, for me, it was something that I really wanted to look at because I had an experience with my son this year. So this year, thanks to my attendance at some of the MALDEF classes, I realized that I could ask for an evaluation for my son. And this was something that I did. I asked for my son to be evaluated. And so now my son is receiving support because I was seeing that my son was not making progress and I wasn't sure how to help him. But thanks to the information that I received in the MALDEF parent classes, and I've been attending to those classes, and also my participation in the ELEC, I realized that that's how we can get things done. So with this recommendation, we're asking that children receive more support. The students who are English learners and who are the long-term English learners, because these children need more support. And for the students that have the IEPs, they also need that help. We need to continue helping those students because if we don't, they will get behind every year. And that's not fair for those kids. So we need to focus more on these kids and provide them support so that they can reach a high level of achievement like the other kids. And so this recommendation also, we're asking for the principals and the assistant principals to participate in that. So thank you very much. Good evening. Good evening, members of the board and members of the public. My name is Gloria Hernandez, and I am the past president of the DLAC subcommittee. And so today I am here to talk about recommendation number 8. And that one's up on the screen right now. And I would like to ask for there to be an improvement for language access in order for our Spanish-speaking parents be able to engage more at the schools. And so we would like to allocate a certain amount of funding in order to provide that support to our families. So we want trained staff members to offer that language access to parents so that they have the possibility of going to back-to-school night or a conference with their students whenever they're going to get their grades. We don't want language to be a barrier. We want parents to leave that meeting understanding what was said and really understanding how the school works, and we want parents to feel comfortable that they're speaking in their own language, or that there's that support for them to be able to receive that information so that they can support their children. And I've experienced it personally. I've heard comments from other parents saying, like, I've been to back to school night, but there's not enough staff members, or the person that was there present didn't have the ability to really do a professional job so that I could understand the information. And I still have doubts, and I actually have even more questions because the interpretation that was provided was confusing. So now I'm going to talk about a recommendation that's not new, but it's about to be implemented. And so this one is to strengthen the relationship and collaboration between elementary schools, junior high schools, and high schools to support parents with these different phases of transition, like how to transition from one school to another. So like you all know, when children are in elementary school, if parents don't have that information of what's the process, all the different classes that are available, because the program in a secondary school is very different than an elementary school. And the same way, when they're at the junior high and they're going to go on to high school, things continue to change. So as parents, we still don't have the knowledge that we need about the school system. And in order for us to understand all of those classes that are being offered, or that maybe sometimes we haven't even heard of those classes. So sometimes we don't have the information, and if we don't know, well, we don't know. So we're asking for more workshops. We want funding to be allocated so that parents understand the transitions. And so right now, that's still not being implemented. So we want to continue and strengthen that relationship and collaboration between the schools. And so also, some Spanish-speaking parents are completely lost because they don't understand the information. I know that the district offers, sorry, I got a little mixed up. They offer open schools when they can go and visit the schools. So there's something for students when they go during their school hours. And then in junior high and high school, they have the counselors attend and visit, and they give them information. But also as parents, we also form part of our students' education. So I think it's important that we receive that information as well, because when there's an open house or something like that to go visit schools, there's not enough time to go and get the information because the teacher is explaining what their class is all about. But sometimes there's like 20 parents that want to ask questions and have information, and the teacher is not available to dedicate 5 minutes to each person. So it's not enough time to really ask questions, because as parents, we don't have just one question, we have many questions. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Beto Gallegos, and I am a parent of a student that goes to Cleveland. So I'm going to share with you recommendation number 9. And recommendation number 9 is ongoing professional learning for restorative approaches so that they be implemented and monitored to our certificated and classified staff and families. And my colleague here is going to give you an explanation. Good evening. Good evening to the members of the Board of Education. I'm going to explain a little bit about this recommendation number 9. So we know that these strategies are now being used in all schools. We would like for this to continue, this professional learning. And we would like to learn about these strategies with our families. And with this, we hope that the suspension rates will be much lower for our students who are English learners, which is right now too high. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Gloria Sotelo, and I'm part of the ELAC at La Cuesta. And also, I'm part of the DLAC here. And so one of the recommendations, recommendation number 11, is about the schools with the district to form an alliance with parents and official institutions or external educational agencies to improve the knowledge of parents who are not aware of all of these things. Sorry about that. I'm just very excited to be up here. And so this is to continue offering and opening up workshops so that parents can continue to learn. Because with all of this new terminology, a lot of parents don't know it, like especially with computers. And so that way, we are asking the district and the Board of Education that you support us as parents, because sometimes we don't know how to use those types of things and we don't have them at home. So this could be a support that we could give to our children as well, in order to really promote their academic achievement. So now, number 13 is to offer support by the district for children who are learning English. And so this is for the children who are at a low level in English. And so I know that my son is in that program, but I've never really had any kind of information with regards to the progress that he's made. So we would like to have an evaluation for these students through official institutions or external educational institutions. And that way, we can help the district to really align their system and the support for those students that are at a low level in English. And we can align that with federal regulations and state regulations. And so this recommendation is being made because it's highly needed and it's very important in order for these students to make academic progress. And we need to look at the difference that there's going to be. So if this recommendation is put into place, then we'll be able to really see that difference. And so thank you very much, and I apologize. Well, so it's going to be my turn to talk about a recommendation that seems to be a dream. It could be a possibility, or it could be like an ideal. But I think in all this time in this planet, everything that has been done has been based on a dream, a goal, ideals. So we would like to present this recommendation for you to explore the possibility of forming a committee to look at the possibility of having a program for dual immersion. So a lot of people in our community are interested in having this option. And so I say this because I think can be a historic moment that in the U.S. we have a lot of languages, but there are two languages that are the dominant languages, English and Spanish. How would this be if we could take off our headsets? And with all due respect, maybe other people speak French or German. If we could understand both languages, English and Spanish, together, what could we see in the future? Like, what could we do with that? So it's human nature to really see, what the progress can be. So Caucasians here speaking English and Spanish, and Latinos speaking English and Spanish, speaking both of these languages. And sometimes kids mix two languages, and they speak Spanglish because they're mixing the two languages. But we would like to recommend that maybe we can work on a dream, that maybe in the U.S. we can speak two languages. We can speak these two main languages. This is a great country that we love, but we're also losing our Spanish. We're learning English, but we're losing Spanish. But Spanish is also beautiful. There's a very beautiful phrase, and it says, French was to speak of love. English was made to speak of business. But Spanish was made to speak with God. And so maybe we could all speak these languages and work together. Thank you.
Well, I'm switching now to English. Again, I just want to echo Dr. Ramirez's comments at the beginning of our presentation, that we truly appreciate the many hours of dedication that this subcommittee has devoted to your presentation today. And with that, we have some time for any questions or comments.
Thank you very much. I know Ms. Parker. Go ahead.
Thank you. These were really helpful. It's great to see the progress together with the next year's recommendations. I really like this new structure. So thank you for moving in this direction. And I think, I'm hoping that Dr. Ramirez will say that all these things, the new things that are suggested, in particular, because we know the others are in some phase of progress, I hope you could address whether or not those are feasible. But particularly on number 3, I guess my question is, did the DLAC talk about Proposition 58 at all? In the context of, in some ways, I don't feel, it just seems like the perfect committee to talk about it, because it could be a way forward with a whole new set of recommendations and possibilities for the district. So that's my question.
Just to say that we did broach the subject of Proposition 58, really kind of breaking down the additional regulations and barriers to dual language immersion or any other alternative program. So we did discuss that, and I believe that allowed them to have the desire to present this recommendation to you. So to some extent, we did review Proposition 58.
Well, thank you, Ms. Parker. I think, and if I understood your question correctly, it had more to do with the feasibility of the recommendations put forward.
Particularly the new ones.
Of the new ones. I'll take that in a couple of different ways. I think some of it is, and that's why the recommendations were couched and have been couched for the last several years in terms of not just check boxes, because that's not really at all what they were intended to be or what they are or how they're being carried out and thought of in terms of what we carry out in terms of our initiatives and work. So they were couched as being in progress. And part of that, and the part that you have some visibility to, is how the Office of Director of EL and Parent Engagement, in particular, has established a recursive cycle of feedback to the DLAC at large and then to this committee in particular. And that is a way in which we try to inform our DLAC parents about the status and where things are. What I would say in terms of feasibility is that many of these recommendations are deep, systemic, and cultural issues within the fabric of our school district. And in order for us to retool those, it's going to take a lot of continued self-reflection and continued hard work and dedication and maintained focus over an extended period of time. We've seen tremendous gains, and I would say that we've led largely with culture. the ability to engender trust, as demonstrated here, the ability to extend to our parents the opportunity to partner with us in crafting recommendations and giving them a voice and a platform to do that. That's just one symbolic aspect of this. But to your point specifically, we would have to talk a whole lot more about this in as far as each recommendation. What I can tell you is that, especially, and this is why it's so timely, as it relates to LCAP, as it relates to SPSAs coming up in 2 weeks, you'll start to see, and hopefully you have seen, Ms. Parker, movement in terms of prioritizing through action, goal setting, and allocation of budget resources and human capital to these initiatives. So they're they're so deep and so rich that it really merits continued dialogue.
Ms. Capps?
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for presenting. I had 2 questions. The first is on the training. I really appreciate your point about it's great to have a committee, but if people don't know what the full potential of that is, then it doesn't live up to what it could be. And I wondered about the training, and maybe perhaps you've addressed it in your responses, but can we beef up training on sites?
Yes, and it'll have to be, we've gone a couple of different models. We've established tools to norm some of the training and at least the basic facts and functions of the ELAC. We've revised the ELAC manual from the district office year over year. Some years bigger revisions than others. I think Ms. Maria Levis-Horton has a lot of experience in being able to pull together, and we've talked on a very preliminary basis on what that may look like, where maybe some of those trainings are centralized, provided in different kind of installments, different settings, to be able to arm and equip our parents with the right information. Also understanding that there's a difference between training and learning. And I think what our parents here are demonstrating is that this is about more than training, but really learning by doing, by having that partnership with our staff and with our principal leaders in particular, but that it's over time. But in terms of the training, I think we've got some ideas on how we can better equip our parents with the right information as a foundational, more foundational to their work as the year gets underway.
Thank you. And my second question is rather specific, but I hear you so much about the communication, and I know we have challenges with email, and as a parent, I read every parent square carefully, and most of them are through email, and I don't know if, but yet some are from text, and I don't know if we have the ability to be texting as much as email. Is that a specific? Lauren's nodding her head, but I feel as though I get 9 to 1, 9 being email versus 1 text, and maybe that's something, a very technical response we can do to help communicate more appropriately.
Yeah, currently, Parent Square is going to make changes this summer, but is it on? On. So Parent Square is going to be making changes. Oh, there we go. Parent Square is going to be making changes this summer, but currently we have an alert system and a post system. So the alert has the text, voicemail, email capabilities, but you can't hyperlink, you can't attach photos to it. It's really predominantly used for emergency purposes. So the post, which you probably see more often, which is commonly used by principals, is email. The alerts have 2 separate tabs, English and Spanish.
Right.
And the alert is connected to people's home language. And certainly Brian Rouse, Maria, and I had a meeting today to talk about communication as well. And it's definitely on our radar.
So we could ideally move in a direction, I think, that would help if more messages were communicated by text.
You can always also set up Parent Square to send you a text too.
Okay.
Can I add, can I add something to that? We need to do a push to have parents install. A lot of our parents actually have smartphones, and we need to do a push to have them install the Parent Square app, which is available also in English and Spanish, and it'll allow us to push more detailed messages via, you know how you get push messages rather than text messages? Text messages are very limited, so we're hoping to do that at the beginning of next school year.
Thank you.
I would like to comment on what you said and one of the recommendations. And the thing is that our parents, they lack the knowledge of using technology. That's a big barrier for them. So that's why we're suggesting to bring some outside, I don't know, maybe city college, just to mention some resource for them to come to the parents and make a training on how to navigate the, just to get an email. There are parents that they don't know how to get an email address. And there are parents that even though they have a smartphone, they don't know how to download or how to use it. I have a Monday table at Harding School, and parents come and she asked me, I didn't receive any Parent Square. And then she showed me, and she was embarrassed. She's like, oh, and I told her, you just need to click on this link. And she goes, oh my, I'm so dumb. It's like, no, it's like when you don't know, you don't know. And it's like, it's okay. So you just have to click in here, and just something that it may sound is really basic. Our parents lack that knowledge.
Mr. Paredes-Ulloa.
Thank you very much for being here today with us, and thank you for all the work you've done over the years. It's taken so much sacrifice, the creation of all of these presentations and plans. I know that it's taken a lot of effort on your side, that you've been away from your family and children, so thank you. Also, I'd like to say that I get you, because I've lived exactly what you've described. I've been a student in this district with parents that most of them spoke parents, and one of the main difficulties has been the access to communication, not only in this district, also linguistic access in terms of the news from newspapers and from the police department. And I know that when I was a child, I used to take over my parents' role as parents, and I know the transition from the elementary school to secondary education was difficult, and I was the one who had the information. I knew about my timetable, and from there I knew that I was going to high school, and from there to college and university, and I was aware of all of the requirements that I had to meet to be prepared, to be ready. So during my school years, my parents didn't know what I was doing. I am one of 3 children, and I was one of the kids who was moving forward with his own education. I was developing and growing as a person, and I know that if my parents had had these opportunities that you are mentioning, probably my parents would have been members of your committees, and it's beautiful to see you making this effort, not only on behalf of your children, but on behalf of all of the students at the district, because tomorrow, in 10, 15, 50 years, we are a school district, and there is no reason why we shouldn't be able to communicate properly with the parents, independently of the language spoken, independently of them speaking Chinese, French. We should be able to help them, to help parents educate their children. It is our responsibility. It is not only the responsibility of this Board of Education, but also of principals, even chefs who works at the kitchen. We are all members of this community. and of this network. So again, thank you so much for being here today. You've touched my heart, and I feel sad because we are just making progress now for our parents, and I'd like to encourage our parents to continue with their efforts independently of their children having already graduated. I would like you to continue to attend these meetings, to attend the meetings of the DLAC, because it is important for you to continue with your work. Thank you.
Ms. Sims-Martin?
What he said. I'll just add a little on to that I do appreciate it, and so coming forth and the courage you have to show to be in a place where you're talking in a different language, and certainly get the appreciation of that when you're listening to that and having it translated in terms of that. So we get a small taste of that piece, but certainly want to appreciate your efforts coming forth and speaking with us this evening. My question is with regards to the recommendations. I know we get this annually, but is there a place during the year that we can tie those recommendations to an action that has happened, such as you mentioned the LCAP? So when we're looking at the LCAP, is there a way to tie that into something that may have been recommended through the DLAC or the ELAC, how we do that, so that we can see that the progress is being made throughout the year as opposed to getting it here at the very end?
Yes. I'll elaborate. Yes, there are opportunities. I think we can be much more intentional in bringing those things to the board's attention. We probably need to strategize a bit as a department and really as maybe in the cabinet, because as you noticed, these recommendations aren't held by any one office, by any one person, not even by a single school. They really are systemic, as I mentioned before. So I think we will have to put our heads together. LCAP seems like a perfect opportunity to call out a few, and there are more than a few. The other thing that I would like to say is that there are so many others that forms of professional learning that aren't necessarily reflected here around our staff, initiatives that I think are very important to the outcomes of all students, but particularly our language learners. And those, I think, are great opportunities for us to share with you, so that you can also better speak to the things that are happening across our district.
Okay, I appreciate that. And just one final comment, because I think it's important to, even if there's small wins or small progress, that we know that and it's publicized in terms of that, so you don't feel like I'm doing an effortless job of doing this and I'm here and I'm showing up. So it's important for, even if it's a small whatever, meaning like, increasing the technology. That's huge. We may think it's small, but that's a huge piece forward progress that, yes, our concerns are being heard, and then there's something being done about them. So appreciate that.
Thank you. I just would like to say that, first of all, I really appreciated the presentation being in Spanish, and it is a beautiful language, and I wish that I could speak Spanish. I can speak very little. But that's not to say poquito. But that's not to say that I don't try. But it's not. It's just it doesn't come naturally for me, and it's something that I need to work on. But I really, really appreciated the presentation. I also appreciated your words when you said about the goals and dreams and ideals, and what you provided were your goals and your dreams and your ideals. And I really, really want you to know I heard them and I hear them. Your recommendations are very important. The piece on pathways is something that I'm very passionate about and feel very strongly that we need to ensure that we have pathways starting from elementary all the way through to the academies and our other AP programs, so that students have access and have the ability to continue to be challenged, all students, but certainly the recommendation for the English language learner students who have not had those opportunities or been not provided those pathways. I want to speak to the idea of really the language barrier in terms of the interpretation. Having gone to the PETA meeting, one of the parents, they spent 7 weeks coming up with recommendations, and yet they're frustrated because these recommendations happen, but then what happens afterwards? So I think it's really important, like Ms. Sims-Moten mentioned, is getting some progress reports along the way is crucial to understanding what is being done. Because it's one thing to say, oh, you have all these recommendations, this is nice, check, 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 and then you come back and you're like, well, we're still having the same problem, which is interpretation at meetings. The idea that parents don't necessarily go to an ELAC meeting and a PTSA meeting because at PTSA meetings, there isn't enough interpretation. So I think that's a huge piece that I would like to, my question is, there was one little suitcase at the San Marcos High School meeting of translators. And how do we, it seems that one of the complaints has been there isn't enough of these devices or people to actually be able to speak into these devices to provide interpretation of those meetings. And I think one of the important things, too, is the bringing together of the ELAC and the DLAC and the PTSA. It's like, how can we bring all of these groups together to have a conversation, to understand what the concerns are in each of those groups, as well as what is the great things that are going on in the schools. So I think we need to find a way to strategize, to merge and bring these opportunities together. But I do think what's really important is this interpretation piece, and I wondered, Dr. Ramirez, if you could speak to that, because that seems to be a consistent message that I'm hearing.
It is, and it's long been a challenge for us, language access, in spite of some tremendous efforts, models that have been very successful in getting language access out to the forefront. It's an issue of capacity across our district, and I would say that it's, at its base, it's about ensuring that we have more and more of our workforce that is biliterate or bilingual. That is one way, and we've certainly made efforts in our hiring practices to ensure that we bring in more and more bilingual individuals into our workforce. More broadly, I would say that there are just so many exchanges that happen between our families and our staff on a daily basis, from the most informal to the most formal. You've heard parent conferences come up, and we've prioritized those high leverage events, such as parent conferences or back to school night. And we have, I don't know if the board is completely aware of all of the efforts over the last many years. It hasn't been just recently, where we have moved toward increased capacity through interpreting for social justice, community interpreter training. We have now trained staff numbering in the hundreds. And so the efforts have been there, and nevertheless, just the speed at which communication happens and the interplay is so vast that for us to get into all of those spaces, it's why you hear as much feedback to that effect. We have created spaces in the budget for translating of syllabi. I mean, these are a number of initiatives that I think it would be important for the board to more fully understand, because the efforts are there, and maybe provide us some feedback and guidance in terms of what might make sense next. But I think I would greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to bring that forward so that we can provide you a good just a kind of a historical perspective and where we are situated currently when it comes to language access, because tremendous things have happened, and yet still we have continued work to do.
Yes, well, I appreciate that, and I would like to learn more about that. And I do think that that seems to be a consistent message, though. And so if it's consistent and it's still happening, and just even the fact of not the training that Miss, who are you? Miss Capps. It's a late night. But just the training itself, like what buttons to push. I'm constantly trying to figure out what buttons to push. And so to have that and then to have a language barrier on top of it, I just think I'd like to know more. I'd like to know how we can strategize with that. And I feel that every recommendation is important and that we need to hear it and we need to think about it and we need to learn about where we are in the process of those. And I look forward to hearing reports on how far we've come and where we're heading, and continue to hear from you to share also the good things that are happening. So hopefully we can hear some of those too. But also it's really important to hear the concerns that you have, because your children are our children, and all of your children and all of our children are important. And we want all of our children to succeed academically, social, emotionally, career, college, wherever they may go. And that's our job as a district, to support all of you and your families and our families. So thank you for all of the time and efforts that you have put into this.
I think I want to make one comment just to make sure that you get a chance to read the response to all of the recommendations that were made last year. It's a multi-page document that describes all of the things that have been done toward the implementation of the recommendations that were made last year. And so obviously we didn't have time to present on that, but you do have them in both English and Spanish in terms of updating you on what was accomplished this up until April at least of this year. So thank you.
And just to acknowledge that I do, and I did read, and I respect the work that you are doing in our district, both of you. I really do. It's a lot of work, and it's and you've done it in such a wonderful professional way and a comprehensive approach. I guess I'm just sort of also speaking for those who are in a position of still being challenged in not receiving everything that they feel they should deserve or should have. Basic level of communication on some degrees. So I'm speaking, supporting all of you. Thank you. Mr. Paredes Ulloa.
Just one last comment, sorry. As you were speaking about interpretation, building that capacity piece, I would ask that we start transitioning as we build that capacity from consecutive interpretation to simultaneous interpretation, just because I've seen firsthand how awkward consecutive interpretation is, where one person speaks, another person speaks, one person speaks, another person speaks, and it really kills kind of the flow of the message, and it really does kind of create an inequity, where if the majority of the room speaks one language, they're free to speak their mind in uninterrupted fashion. But if you're doing consecutive, you don't have that. You're getting edited, you're getting stopped. It really kills, again, the message, but also kills the motivation to put out that message as well.
And thank you, Mr. Paredes Ulloa, because you have also brought forward an agenda item that we would like to bring forward as a board discussion, which is on language justice. So I'm really hoping that we can get that on the agenda sooner than later. So if we have any other comments, I think what we're going to do is take a break. Thank you very much for your report again. And we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we will resume. Thank you. We're going to move back to item number 16, which was part of the action agenda before we move forward again. Approval of Brandman Internship Contract Agreement. Mr. Matsuoka.
And Ms. Ppic is there in case we have any super technical questions. So again, we partner with many higher ed organizations to provide teacher credentialing support. So here's an agreement with Brandman University. Oh, I see it's a subsidiary of Chapman. Chapman is in the beautiful little town of Orange. in Orange County. So it's approving one of our many agreements to support teacher credentialing programs.
All right, any questions, or Mr. Paredes Ulloa?
Just language. Internship, the same thing as student teaching? No.
No.
May I find out the difference?
I will speak through the mic, the answer from the back. Would you like any elaboration on that?
I would love an elaboration.
Okay.
Definition,
Ms.
maybe
Ppic,
used in a sentence.
Please come to the podium.
I wasn't actually expecting this. So an internship credential allows people to teach who are not fully credentialed, but they're still currently enrolled in a credential program. Student teaching, there's no pay involved.
So my only context to this would be like an emergency credential for students still in a program.
Similar to an emergency credential, the commission no longer, there are very limited emergency credentials that the commission issues. But in internship, there's a lot more supports put in place so that those that are teaching under these internship credentials are successful. Stand here.
All right, any other questions? Okay, motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. We'll now move to item 2, report on revised 2018-2019 interim reclassification criteria. Dr. Ramirez.
Good evening once again, Board. I would just call up Ms. Maria Larios Horton, who was going to walk us through an important update to our reclassification criteria.
All right, good evening again. Dr. Reed, members of the board, Mr. Matsuoka and cabinet, thank you for this opportunity to provide you with an update to our interim reclassification criteria. As I understand it, reclassification is a very important topic for you and felt it was important to bring you this update. Our objective for the next few minutes is to help you understand the proposed metric for the interim reclassification criterion number 1. As you know, the California English Language Development Test was replaced with the LPAC this year. And as a result of that replacement after 20 years with using the CELT, the LPAC became operational this February. As a result, we must update criterion number 1. On January 2nd, the California Department of Education issued some interim reclassification guidance. I do want to say that this was in concert with my first day of work here at SB Unified. So what this first letter to the field from January 2nd, we were able to analyze the letter, and we were able to, after listening to our families and staff, we were able to partner and collaborate with our partner district, Goleta Union School District, to come up with with our revision and a timeline for implementation. And so I want to share with you our timeline. So in March, we began the work of revising interim reclassification criteria number 1. And that brings us to today to provide you an overview. Furthermore, we've learned that because the window for LPAC doesn't close until May 31st, we don't expect the contractor to deliver the results until about late June and early July. So at that time, we will get to work very quickly. Thankfully, we have an amazing ETS department that will help us import those scores in a way that we can manipulate and analyze so that we could therefore forward that data to our schools because it's very important that they make any sorts of schedule changes necessary over the summer. August commences our formal reclassification process. And then in November, the State Board of Education will then approve new criteria, new threshold and cut scores for the LPAC. So we are going to be back here once again next spring because the current information or letter to the field is based on our pilot LPAC, which was piloted last year all throughout the state. So we will revisit this topic again next spring. Furthermore, the letter to the field states that we must use both proficiency level descriptors and also threshold scores. And so that brings us to conversations I've had with the Department of Education to confirm, while they're not giving us actual recommendations, it's up to us as districts. We have, and they have insisted that we stay with a level 3 and 4 when revising our interim reclassification criteria. This is a picture of threshold scores. Really the only time these come into play is when we're looking at our middle school, junior high and high school reclassification criterion number 1. Other than that, they don't really play a major factor in our reclassification criteria. In particular, we're going to be paying attention to level 3 threshold scores in that we use them to identify criterion number 1, once again, for our junior high and high schools. And once again, these are derived from the state LPAC pilot that was conducted in 16-17. And the way that we went about establishing the criterion number 1, because once again, the Department of Education did not really give us any strict guidance. It was really left up to us. So we went ahead and analyzed the proficiency or the percentages of students who met criterion number 1 using the CELT, just to see if we could somehow come to a level that was matching or that would align. And the way this worked for us is that for at least our elementary school students, the level that most matched the proficiency of our students using the CELT was the level 4. So at that point, we determined that level 4 was going to be the criterion that we would use for our elementary school students. That changed a little bit when we started looking at the numbers for our junior high and high school students, in that when we did look again at the 2016 data, if we were to include the students that were both level 3 and 4, that number would have over-identified the number of students eligible for criterion number 1. And so and also furthermore, if we had only used level 4, that would have really eliminated a lot of the students who could have been eligible for reclassification. So we kind of met in the middle. And that's where those threshold scores come into play. So we used a midpoint level 3 and above for those students as criterion number 1. Similar case for high school. We again analyzed and came to the conclusion that a midpoint level 3 was the best course of action in this case. That then gave us this, and we're missing grade 6 here. I had updated it, but I guess it didn't come up here. Grades K through 6, we're going to be using level 4. And then grades 7 through 12, we'll be using midpoint level 3 threshold scores. What's very interesting is that because we're not reclassifying the students until next school year, think of this criteria having for example, a grade 6 student would actually be held to the expectation of a grade 5 student. Hopefully that is making sense, because we're not reclassifying them until next year. We're pushing down that criteria 1 year. You all received a copy of the draft interim reclassification criteria. And wanted to make sure you knew that we have been working with different groups to receive feedback, and overwhelmingly have received positive feedback. And so what we know to date about the impact is kind of unknown. We're not really sure what's going to happen. So once we do and we analyze, we'll make sure to share that information with you. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Bart? Mr. Paredes, you go.
Thank you for the presentation. So we're getting this information, but my question is, how are parents that are not in DLAC, in ELAC, or any of these other groups that you've presented to going to get the information? Again, there's, and I think I've shared it with you and Dr. Ramirez, there is a misunderstanding. There's a confusion around what the criteria currently are and what the process is. And so I would be really interested in hearing how we're going to bring this information out to them so we can demystify it in a way that's accessible regardless of language or technology, just in a way that makes clear sense and they can kind of count on and tell back to us if ever quizzed.
Well, yes, we did share this information with DLAC, and the principals did have access to the presentation as well. I mean, to be really honest with you, it's because it is only my fourth month, not an excuse. It has definitely been a little challenging to get it out to all of the constituents, right? What I can say is that sometimes this information, no matter how scaffolded it is, often doesn't make sense to families until they see a result. So we have, at least I have, because of time, really determined with DLAC that where we want to put our energy is to help parents decipher the results once they come. So that way there's some buy-in to the information, and they're actually able to apply it to their students' scores. Because right now, to some degree, outside of DLAC and ELAC, it's a little more challenging. I may have been wrong with that choice, but I think when we're trying to manage energy and time, DLAC decided, like, let's hold and let's really do our really best work when the scores come in and help our families. So that's my answer. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
What I would also say is that in the past, we've engaged in mailers out to parents to give them print versions. I think that's a tool that I think now is in some ways underutilized because of the heavy reliance on social media or technology. What I would also offer up is that we just in explaining the shifts in LPAC, we started really using some CDE material that provided information in infographics, which was much more manageable in a language much more accessible, register that was more accessible to our families. At least that's something that I noted, and something that I'd certainly like to explore far more, again, through those print means when it comes to high-level changes like this. But I would echo Ms. Larios-Horton's decision and comments around focusing around the context of the results so that they understand what comes next, as opposed to focusing our energy on some concepts that can be pretty abstract and very dense, even for us as educators, as we're making sense of it, and rather on ensuring that they have better understanding of where their child or children are situated.
And I just want to say I completely support that decision, because I think of, going into the high school, which I'll be doing next week, trying to explain assessment scores to our high school students, our seniors. If they haven't gotten their assessment scores yet, they have no idea what I'm talking about. English 70 means nothing to them. But again, just how we communicate, and I appreciate you mentioning just physical mailers. That's something even at City College we're kind of just rediscovering is very effective for our parents and our students. So thank you.
Ms. Sims-Mountain.
I just had a question. Is the level 4, is that a baseline in which we're trying to go from, or how does that, and is there a percentage we're trying to move upward?
So the proficiency level descriptors, let me see if I can get back to that. I don't know how familiar you are with the CELT levels. They used to be levels 1 through 5. And so we've gone from a 1 through 5, 1 being beginning level of proficiency to 5 being advanced, to the new levels, which go from 1 to 4. In the past, we expected a student to be at a level 4 or a 5 to be eligible for reclassification. And with this shift, we understand that CDE would like us to use level 3 and 4. And so we want all of our students to get to levels 3 and 4 because that, again, would, tell us that the student is proficient in the language. We don't know what the Department of Education will ask of us in November of this coming year once they have the actual scores from our students. The scores from the field tests were never shared with districts, so we don't know. So once we have the November threshold scores, I can speak more to where we actually, what is the real goal. Right now, we've kind of sort of made it up to some degree. But yeah, 3 and 4 would be moderately developed, well-developed. That's where we want our students.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Capps?
That was my question too, so thank you. It's just some general questions. What percentage of English learner students get reclassified every year, just to give a sense of the numbers we're talking about?
So in our district, about 4 years ago, that number was really very, very low. I want to say hovering around 9 or 11%. It's very low. And then since I want to credit the creation of this position, that number nearly doubled to about 22, 23%.
Every year?
Every year.
Great.
Which is really great, yes.
And what would you say the biggest challenge is in the process of reclassification? I know it's a big topic, but just in the process. And because this appears, if I'm understanding this correctly, that there's a little more flexibility in what level you're at. Even just going from 5 to 4, it's slightly broader, correct?
To some extent, it's actually more narrow in that we have only 4 levels,
okay,
as opposed to the 5 that we had before. So and actually it goes back to the end of my presentation, which is the impact of the results. We still don't know, but I'd be happy to share that information once it's more concrete. To your question about what is the greatest challenge, the greatest challenge is, in the past, has not been criterion number 1, getting our students to meet criteria number 1, which is the state exam on language proficiency. The real challenge has been criterion number 2 and 3, which is where the rubber meets the road. And that's where our students have to demonstrate literacy expectations at about grade level. And so that continues to be a little bit of a challenge, not just for our district, but everywhere. And so we're going to, I think, to speak to something positive that is happening, we are, our district is now assessing our students more frequently around literacy to be able to provide our educators with the information that they need to adjust their instruction and their interventions for our students.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so, obviously, to the challenge which was brought up in one of the recommendations in terms of the supporting and mentoring the students in the reclassification phase, too, which is crucial to this whole process. So even once you get there, then are you getting the support that you need to sustain it and move forward? So there's a lot to cover and to understand. So I would look forward to learning more about what those November threshold scores are and where we are relational to that, and what the goals perhaps of the district from 22% to where we could possibly go going forward as well. But I think it's great to see that with the position in place that you are now in, that we are thankful for, that there has been this double in terms of reclassification. So that's a positive trend going forward. Thank you.
Can I add a comment here? I'll ask our experts to confirm the statement or not. What I've learned in the acquisition of language space, I think the research says it's about 5 to 6 years going from knowing only a language to acquiring English. So given that it's a 5 to 6 year process, I just want us to be aware that 22% is great, but in any given year, we're going to get like 1/5 or 1/6 reclassified. So I just want to make sure that you understand just that whole curve of acquiring a language. I mean, if it's a 5-year process, 20% is good. I would love to go faster, but I just want us to be aware that we're not going to get to like a 50% reclassification rate, because that would be learning English in 2 years. Right. Okay, so I'm just, I see it from.
And there is also a danger to having criteria that over-reclassify students as well. So we definitely should be aware that that number, to some degree, may stagnate simply because the increase over the last 3 years has been so exponential. So I invite you all to take that into consideration as we move forward, for sure. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to make a little change here. We have a public comment for staff report and revised resolution regarding district-based elections, that we will take that public comment, but we are going to pull and defer this conversation and report to our next board meeting, because we want to make sure that we include Ms. Parker for that conversation. So if we have the public comment, if we could have that person come forward. Ms. Sims-Moten.
Lindsay Rojas.
Good evening. As you said, my name is Lindsay Rojas, and I'm a member of the District Elections Committee. I represent the committee in Old Town Goleta that moved to form districts in that city. I am here with you today to inform you of a few points you need to consider before taking action on a resolution to form district election systems. One, that the California Voting Rights Act was instituted to bring equality of representation on elected bodies. Two, creating boundaries would only be ethical and approvable to avoid any lawsuit if the boundaries are formed to develop candidates of majority-minority districts. Three, that there must be enough majority-minority districts to not frack a majority-minority neighborhood or break it apart. To not pack a majority-minority community into one sole district. And the most important part is that it must create enough majority-minority choice representatives to balance out the population you serve. I am handing you a copy, and it's just the map. So I'm handing you a copy of the Santa Barbara Unified School District district map and the comparison with the Santa Barbara City District election map. And as you can see, it's pretty big of a difference. You need to know that if you constitute district elections under a 5-member board, you only achieve one majority-minority district. We ask that you take your time in examining a resolution to implement district elections with a 7-member board as part of your resolution. If you move forward with one basic resolution without the identification moving into a 7-member board, you will be forcing us to consider litigation on fracking, and disenfranchising 3 cities of majority-minority communities into one majority-minority seat on your school board. And we do not wish that. What we do wish is to help you in your progress, however long it takes. We are not here to hurt our schools, but to help you slowly get to the finish line in creating more minority-majority representation in our school board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Moving forward to our report on mental health request for proposals, RFP, for elementary, Dr. Wageneck.
Good evening again, Board, Dr. Reed, Mr. Matsuoka. I'll start by saying that the green ribbon is for Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I'm not usually a ribbon wearer, but right now I am, and I think it's very timely to be here and have that coinciding. So we'll do this in two steps. A little background. We have, and I know I was reflecting that for the past year, I feel like I've been having conversations with you in various ways about the state of our mental health services. But in our elementary schools, we have FSA, and that includes our preschools. FSA, CADA, and CALM are all currently providing services. Again, we really saw the need, the demonstrated need to work with one provider or a group of providers who are working together. And so the RFP was released in January. On April 11th, a group of staff came together and did a blind read of the applications. And through that process, CALM emerged as the organization, the application that was chosen to be brought forward for recommendation. So I'd like to run through for you the description, and again, this was a long application. I've tried to bring it down for the presentation to the details, and there is time for questions at the end. Really what stood out in CALM's application was functioning as part of the collaborative team at each school site. So the readers liked the feel of the application and that sense that they would be part of the team. Really the second area, that idea that CALM would provide capacity building around becoming trauma-informed educators. And that's something, again, that has been it's a vision of ours, is to have educators who wear a trauma lens when they're working with students, and so that came forth. Also the idea that this trauma-informed capacity building had to involve parent education, supporting the teachers in the classroom, and as well as providing students with individual and group counseling on site, that really it was this braiding of services to all groups on the campus. And then there was also the piece of knowing when referrals to outside agencies were needed for students, that there was a limitation to what could be provided in school, but that CALM would refer out either to their services at their agency or to other agencies in the community. So what can we expect from our work with CALM? They presented the ARC model, and that was the idea of attachment, self-regulation, and competency. And attachment relates to the idea that children need to feel an attachment to others, but especially to adults, to their teachers, to their parents. Self-regulation. How do you regulate yourself in class when you're a 5-year-old and you're experiencing trauma? How do you do that? How do you cope? And then showing competency and having self-efficacy, be able to walk around the world as an 8-year-old and feel like you have an internal locus of control and you're a competent human being who's feeling good about themselves. So that's the overall model. The multi-tiered system of support, and I really am, I could have brought a graphic in and I didn't, so I apologize. But when we think of the multi-tiered system of support, it's the idea of the triangle where the base is 100% of students. What will 100% of students, what's the universal delivery to all students preschool through 6th grade? Well, really, it's that idea of building a trauma-informed school community. And so that all students are served in the ways that they need to be, that all teachers are provided with tools, a toolkit to work with students. Then, of course, Tier 2 is really early intervention. That's individual and group counseling. And then finally, the final tier, the 1% to 3% of students who really need intensive services, and that includes managing their long-term care. And CALM has presented us with a robust plan for being able to do that, a robust proposal. We asked the applicants to talk to us about how they would collaborate with school staff, collaborate with the district staff, but also show leadership. And so one thing that came out was, and this really stood out for those who were in the group, the idea of going to each school and doing a needs assessment. So rather than coming in with a plan and overlaying that on a school, rather starting with a needs assessment and then working to put services in place that make sense. And that, I know it resonated with me, the idea when I think of a Cleveland Elementary and a Roosevelt Elementary and an Adams and a Monroe and Santa Barbara Community Academy and all of our preschools, that idea of going in sort of with the blank slate and building based on the needs of the school was very important. So that's the co-creating of the programs that are beneficial to each site. Building the capacity, again, building those trauma-informed school communities. That students, it's this idea that students are not their behaviors. And having educators, we can know that in our heads and we can know it in our hearts, but sometimes our actions, it makes it hard. It's hard to be a teacher. And so that idea of building capacity in our teachers really came through. And then showing leadership by providing parent nights in collaboration with school staff on topics that parents are asking for, that staff are asking for. So in terms of staffing and training, what we could expect from CALM would be that all of the individuals working in our schools would be marriage and family therapists, licensed clinical social workers, psychologists, or advanced interns. So interns who have, most of them, master's degrees already, and they've earned in excess of 1,000 hours. There was an emphasis on the fact that over 50% of their staff are bilingual and bicultural in Spanish, that CALM does provide a detailed supervision of their interns, that they hold weekly team meetings with their staff, and then they do monthly trainings, and those would all happen outside of the school day. So, so that wouldn't interfere with services being delivered to students. In terms of the program evaluation, this is an area that we'll need to, as we co-construct the model, if you approve us moving forward, we'll need to work on more, but they did present the outcomes. And rather than reading through those, I know you've been given the information, but it's some of the things I've already talked about before. We're going to look and see, and these are things that we can measure. Decreasing challenging behaviors in school and home, increasing student self-efficacy. We can measure that through the CHICS, the Healthy Kids Survey. Having students resolving conflicts calmly. That's restorative approaches, right? So, and CALM did talk about restorative approaches in their application. The number of referrals to outside community agencies in mental health. In terms of staff outcomes, which is, again, the emphasis on staff and providing them, building capacity in staff came through. The development of that trauma lens for educators. Staff feeling more confident, reporting that they feel more confident managing their classrooms, that they feel like they have increased communication skills. That fourth bullet is really important, that staff develop self-care strategies, and CALM wrote about that, when your vessel is full, knowing how to empty the vessel. Familiarity with community resources, that staff and parents know where to go for help. And then finally, that's the big one, fewer referrals for counseling service, actually decreasing it because teachers and other staff feel more equipped to work with students in the classroom and don't become overwhelmed. So, we have some work with the budget. The proposed budget is $876,000. Our current funding available through Title I and the LCAP is $375,000. There is additional CALM funding available, but certainly not enough to bridge that gap. So in our work, we're going to have to determine how to bridge that monetary gap and look at where we would need to cut in service or look for outside resources to fill that need.
All right,
I'm sure
thank
you have questions.
Yes.
So.
Mr. Paredes Ulloa.
It's like a quiz every meeting, isn't it? Awesome proposal. Thank you for the presentation. I love the piece about, especially the caregiver self-care. That's a huge piece. I mean, burnout is so easy with MFTs, with LCSWs, with teachers, counselors. So I appreciate that being part of the proposal and what we're seeing tonight. Going back to the budget piece, I was just wondering, what is 375? I know that's a weird question. What does 375 get us? And what would 876 get us ideally? Because I'm trying to wonder, because I know CALM does great work, and because of the great work that they do, they have a waiting list. And so where's the capacity being built from? How would we be able to respond to the needs of all these elementary schools?
Really, it's the difference between having part-time mental health services in schools and full-time. And the proposed budget would allow us, and the principals understand this, and I'm meeting with the elementary principals to talk with them about their unique needs. But we know that some of our schools that are smaller in enrollment have higher level of needs around mental health services. And some of the larger schools, they have equal needs, though they may have 200 fewer students. And so those are determinations we have to make. But yeah, it's really a matter between having full-time, robust services and being able to do everything that's in the application and having to limit that. But there are also, there are ways to get crafty with things, and so we have to talk about that as well.
And also to my other part of the question is, and Ms. Wolzak's here, maybe she can answer as well. Again, Calm has a waiting list on a lot of its services, so I was just wondering, would this go towards hiring new staff or just again, building the capacity of Calm's?
I warned Ms. Walzak that she might be put on the spot, so this is Elena Walzak, the Executive Director of Calm.
Good evening. Our plan for this proposal is that it would be completely separate staff. It wouldn't be clinic-based, so it would be part of our philosophy of embedding in the school community. So similarly to what we've been doing in preschools, where we have our therapists, which are called consultants, they're going out and they're embedding in the school community. That would be what these staff would be doing. So we do have a wait list in our clinic-based services, but these would be different staff that would be deployed specifically for the elementary schools. And if I may comment on the budget issue, I would just say that it would be part-time versus full-time, but I think it would be very hard to do the integrated, comprehensive philosophical approach that we proposed in our proposal with half the funding, because we wouldn't be able to do the systemic approach in the same way. It would be more delivering of individual services rather than a comprehensive holistic approach to the school environment. So obviously we prefer to do the latter, and we are going to be talking over subsequent meetings about how we can raise additional dollars together, jointly, the district and Calm, but I think there is a model difference that may happen if full funding isn't actualized.
Thank you. Stay close. Please stay close.
Ms. Sims-Moton.
Yeah, so just on the budget piece, is this an annual budget?
This is annual. This is a one-year, this would be a one-year contract.
And so are there any subcontractors in this, or is it just all one agency of Calm?
This is just Calm.
So when you're mentioning that you were referring out to counseling services, so how would you be supporting that referrals out, or would that just be part of an MOU?
For example, if there was a referral out to behavioral wellness, then the county behavioral wellness would pick that up, or if it was to some other service, it would be picked up by that agency.
So this is probably more over a period of years. I was trying to think of savings that may happen as a result of not needing extra services, because these services are more intensive, but we wouldn't realize it in this first year because it would take time to realize that, to support that piece. Okay, I'm going to have to keep thinking on that.
Okay.
Ms. Capps.
Thank you, Ms. Walzak, for that answer, because that's actually what I was getting at, is along the lines of Mr. Yoa's point. The word you used, embedded, I just think is so important. So these are people that these kids will know and see, and not sort of have a new person every time or that kind of thing. So I know that's the goal, and that's the challenge with the funding, but I appreciate that approach. Thanks.
So my question is, I have a couple questions. One is, perhaps is the idea then to do your assessments first? I'm thinking if you have an understanding of really what the needs are of the schools, that maybe the budget, or maybe it might change depending on what the schools need in terms of what the challenges are for each school are going to be different.
Well, I think the holistic model is essentially the same, and this is an estimate. I mean, this is, an estimate based on number of students at schools and so forth. The model would be the same, but the level of services or the exact type may change, and you can certainly come up and if there's more to add to that.
I would just say that we haven't, so I know some needs assessment work is being done, but that would be the start, and we're going to have to co-create how it kind of rolls out, because I think the needs assessment, if we're really going to look at each school community as a separate subculture that needs to be addressed holistically, we're going to need to take some time to figure that out. But when the school year starts, services will be needed by some students immediately, so we're going to have some staff that are deployed specifically for mental health service provision while some other staff are kind of working with district staff to do the needs assessment. But the budget affords, and I left my budget papers over there, I'm sorry, but I believe it's 10 FTEs with one administrative supervisor over that group. And so there's 8 elementary schools, so it was having a staff deployed at each school with some extra coverage for additional counseling needs and also just to have coverage and backup. So that could be trimmed, but I think it's hard if you only have a person. Obviously, illnesses happen and vacations happen, and so having that cross-training and that coverage was built into some of the budget figures.
Is this just staffing? There's nothing else in this?
No, there's other operational expenses in there as well.
Okay, so will we get a look at that budget?
Yes.
Okay.
So also, I'm curious as to the evaluation process, and how do you see that happening over the first year, so we can see the development or the challenges or what needs to be changed or augmented or...
Right, so that was something that needs to still be fleshed out, and so we need to talk about exactly what that'll look like. And I know CALM has their internal research folks and data analysts, and so that would be a piece as we co-construct that we would certainly will bring back to the board to present.
Yeah, I just think that's an important piece to understand. Not only are you assessing to find out the challenges and what you need to do and embed the program, but also what does that look like as it unfolds and rolls out in strategic ways. So.
One more question. So we know these services have been provided in the past. So is there a baseline that you'll be working from in terms of needs assessments going forward? Are you using some existing data?
They've been provided at various schools by the different agencies. So do we have a baseline? We have a baseline in terms of knowing how many students have received services. So yes, that we do have. And CALM has been in the preschools, but we've had FSA and CADA in there, and we do get outcomes in terms of number of students served and how many students met their goals, that sort of thing.
Any other questions or comments? So the goal being that you'll come back to us with further information with regards to our questions and what you uncover?
Yes, we'll do that, and I'm proposing to come back the May 22nd meeting on consent to be able to go forward, and actually we'll bring it on action then. So we'll bring it on action, and I'll bring answers to those questions at that time, so that we can move forward and have a contract ready so we can start formally July 1st.
You think you'll have some reconciliation with the budget between then?
We'll have more answers.
Great.
We won't be finished, I don't think, by then, in terms of, I have to get my information to you a week from tomorrow.
Ambitious, but great.
Yes, but I think we'll have answers and we will have made some headway. So I'll have more info for you at that time.
So will we get that budget, to review the budget before it comes to us?
And we'll bring it on action.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's a lot of action to put.
Before we move on from this item, one of the designs in the RFP was to give some frameworks and guidance about what we were looking for from a provider, but without us being prescriptive. And, hearing from the proposals, and what you're seeing is, here's a framework, but to get this all nailed down and then to the dollar, we didn't want to do that until we've identified the provider that we think is the best. And so now there's going to be an iterative cycle of program design, budget. I think we'll have a better idea on the budget. Obviously, we got to get to a number, and we're going to feel like, okay, we need everything, but that's a $500,000 gap. And so we just have to be realistic, and CALM has to be realistic, and I know they will. We're going to make progress, but to jump all the way out to $875,000. We can't do that in 1 year, but I think we will see results. And I think we will incrementally get there over time. So there was a design to this that, we're recommending calm. Now we get to co-construct a model that's progressive, but also we have to be, mindful about the budget.
Well, I respect the framework. I think that it really is, it's really working to support the students in those, and every school is a culture. So I support that. I will also be interested in Ms. Jatay's comments on the budget when we have this put to an action item. So I'm sure she'll be thoroughly ready to share her impressions and ideas.
I purposefully included Ms. Jatay in the group that did the blind read, so.
All right, so we're not.
The last
The bottom line. So, all right, thank you. We're not over, though. Moving on to report on mental health requests for proposals for secondary. Dr. Wagener.
All right, shifting gears. Am I correct? So it was almost a year ago that I think I first reported to the board that we had become aware that there was an increase in suicide attempts. We had a couple deaths of adolescents in our South Coast area. We had 63 reported suicide attempts in 2016-17, and another almost, I think it was 29 reported suicidal ideations. I am happy to tell you right now that as of the 2nd of May, those numbers had dropped greatly, that we had 21 attempts, but that's 21 attempts. So while the crises that we were in a year ago has lessened, we still know that adolescent mental health is a grave concern in our community, as it is in many places in the United States. We have worked with various providers, but primarily have worked with CADA to provide drug and alcohol counseling, but also mental health counseling. In 2017-18, we were, at about the same time we were becoming aware of these issues with the suicide attempts. CADA came to us and they needed to either have the district increase the amount of funding provided, or they would have to cut services. We didn't have that funding available at the time. And so services were cut. We still have CADA YSS services in our high schools this year, but in our junior highs, but at reduced levels. At about the same time and coming out of the suicide crisis that we were having, the self-harm and mental health issues, we had the opportunity to pilot a program with Family Service Agency, thanks to funding from the J.S. Bauer Foundation and the Family Service Agency itself. And this year we have been able to put one full-time therapist in the traditional high schools. And we have a part-time therapist at La Cuesta. I have to say that the Cottage grant, the $100,000 grant from Cottage Hospital, also aided in that. And I can't help but think that perhaps that's why our numbers of suicide attempts have reduced this year. And in a year that, like the one we've had this year, 2017-18, the one we will be talking about for a long time, for many, many reasons, I'm very thankful that we had that support. So again, the RFP process went forward. I want to thank the board again for being so supportive of doing that. Unlike our elementary and preschool space, we only received one application for secondary. And I don't entirely know the whole story, but I've heard some of it, and that was the idea that we have many organizations in our community who provide mental health services, or a number, but really I think there was an understanding that was come to that there wouldn't be a competition, but rather that there was sort of a blessing given that FSA would be the lead organization in this application, and that CADA would collaborate with them in the efforts on the application. So the application I'm bringing to you is that one. It's the recommendation, with FSA being the lead organization and CADA working with them in collaboration. As was the case with elementary school, we have the proposal of a multi-tiered system of support. Tier 1 being, what do 100% of students get? What do all students grades 7 through 12 get? They will receive classroom presentations in a variety of topics related to mental health and drug and alcohol, social emotional learning. Staff trainings in areas of importance will be provided, and then this concept of parent cafes, parent education information nights. Tier 2, individual and group counseling. The presence of family advocates on the campuses, and then again, more intensive parent education for the parents of students who are at risk, kind of moderate level mental health needs. And finally, Tier 3, intensive individual counseling, one-on-one counseling, and referral to outside services such as county behavioral wellness or other agencies. You know, I need to pause here and let the board know, I think you are aware, but remind you, the things that we hear that happen out in the world, they happen in our schools. We have adolescence is when mental health comes forth, when mental illness comes forth to the greatest extent. We have students who have psychotic breaks on campus. But we also have students who are just, and I'm not minimizing it by saying just, but they're stressed to the max. They've got AP tests. They feel like they can't go on and they don't have the answers. And so what's being presented here is we want to provide this range of services to any and all students, regardless of what their needs are. What are our expected what can we expect from FSA and CADA? I like this, the culture of mental health promotion. I really feel that we're in this era in schools, especially in our secondary schools, of promoting mental health, of busting the stigma. I was inspired to wear this by a group of our high school students from the Youth Wellness Council. And I don't know if any of you have experienced them yet, but they're clubs on campus, and they are stigma busters, and they come together and they talk about mental wellness. And, you know, I think it's really encouraging, because just like we talk about our physical health and taking care of ourselves, we need to talk about promoting our mental health and wellness. So I applaud the applicants for including this and wanting to be a part of that. The estimate is that 700 to 750 students will be screened or assessed. Services will be provided to approximately 450 to 500 students. Now, you may say, but what happened to those, you know, I can add 250 to 300 students. What happened to them? Well, that's where these other groups come in. It may be appropriate for, maybe a student doesn't need Tier 2 or Tier 3 ongoing services, but they could really benefit from being like in AHA's after-school program. Or they need to go to Pacific Pride and get involved in a group there. And so that's where we see those students going. The goal is 70 to 75% of students will see an improvement in their symptomology. They'll meet their goals. They'll achieve psychological adjustment, et cetera. They'll reduce their use of substances and or report improvement in family communication and functioning. We had parents here tonight. It's all connected. All of this is interconnected. So, again, we asked the applicants to talk about collaboration and leadership. So this idea of engaging regularly with administrators, school counselors, school psychologists, working with staff teams such as student study teams, attending IEPs, being site treatment teams, being a part of the school, just like we talked about with the school resource deputies, being a part of the school community is very, very key, and that came out in the application. The providing of professional development for school staff. What's vaping? What? Like the vaping thing we've had this year came almost out of nowhere. They'll conduct classroom observations, just as Calm talked about doing with elementary school. If a student's having behavioral issues in class, collaborating with teachers and having teachers understand that, again, that student is not their behavior. And then providing monthly reporting, which I'll talk more about in a moment. Staffing and training, again, as was the case with CALM, the staffing will be marriage and family therapists, licensed social workers, or associates, also known as interns. A commitment to bilingual and bicultural staff, including us in the hiring process. It's always been good to work with CADA in the hiring of the YSSs, and they have had a system for doing the screening, and then we come in on round 2 of interviews, and it's been nice to be a part of that. They provide clinical supervision, accountability for their staff, and then they will provide school staff trainings. Well, our gap is wider here. So the proposal that was brought forward by FSA and CADA is very robust. I have to acknowledge that the application, there was really an effort to look at best practices, evidence-based, research-based best practice programs. This will be an entirely complete overhaul of the way that we refer students for who are suspended for drug and alcohol issues. It will be new types of programming. It will happen at different times than it has before, and so those are details that we will have to work out. The funding available is approximately $475,000, again through Title I and LCAP. The proposed budget here, $1.5 million. FSA and CADA have additional funding sources, and we do have Dr. Lisa Brabo, who's the Executive Director of FSA, and Ed Stonefelt, the Executive Director of CADA, who are here tonight, in case I need to put them on the spot as well with answering questions. So we do have meetings scheduled to work through these issues. I can bring that budget forward to you as well. Program evaluation and data collection, they are proposing, and I think the cost on this is $56,000. Dr. Erica Felix has already been identified, she's based at UCSB, to provide the They are proposing results-based accountability. And this asks 3 questions. How much did we do? How well did we do it? Is anyone better off? The educators in the room, I thought DeFore's PLC questions when I heard that. It's very similar. So they will be reporting monthly to us on how much did we do. We will receive an interim summary in the spring of 2019 on all 3 measures, with a final evaluation report due in September of 2019. Questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Sims-Mountain?
Well, I think my question just translate over to this one as well, with regard to that. The other question that I have with regards to the evaluation, it's a little bit more in depth here when working with UCSB. Would we not be doing that same thing with the elementary, or we don't need that level of?
That is one route that we could pursue. It was just, that's, FSA and CADA put that in their application and proposal. They called it out specifically, whereas that's something that we will, was not in the column application, but we can work that out and make that decision. And bring Dr. Guillermo Juan in on that discussion for both. I mean, she has read through the applications and will be involved in that piece.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's I'm happy to see the evaluation piece. I think it's essential, so thank you.
So I just had a question about also how is the interaction with the staff and administration on a regular basis? How do you see that as in a practical way? Because, I mean, everybody's busy doing everything. I mean, how can we change? It's kind of like a systems change.
It's a systems change, but this year with the high schools, we started that, and I think having the pilot program with FSA started it. But one thing we do need to propose as we build this is that they have those weekly team meetings. Another key piece on this that's been identified in the model, and I didn't call it out in my presentation, was the idea of a lead therapist or a lead counselor who would be the one to work with the deans to identify who needs the assessment. That a lead therapist would actually do all of the screenings and assessments, and then triage, or kind of that concierge model of pointing students in the right direction. And actually, in the application, there's a very detailed graphic on that I can bring back to the board to see how that would work. But I think it is a matter of, when you talk about systems, scheduling those times to meet and talk and ask how it's going. Now, we do that already. We're required to do it through the Cottage grant. We have to have the monthly phone calls with Cottage, but we've also been meeting seems like we talk all the time, Lisa, which is a good thing this year through the pilot program. So at the district level, we'll need to continue to work together, but then at each site, they need to do that as well. And so I will work with the deans to create those systems.
Because honestly, I think that's the huge piece. It's really about building those relationships and the communication piece. And I think the opportunity to really connect with the students is huge in this way, because you're going to have more conversations, more communication amongst the staff about what's going on. So that transparency, I think, is going to be really important.
Well, being in staff meetings and doing trainings and going into classrooms, and again, just like with the resource deputy, being a part of that school community and knowing folks. And I've worked with if we use the YSSs as a model, the successful YSSs are the ones who have been able to do that and become a part of the school culture. It's the same concept. Yeah.
So my other question too is the bulk of the fund, I mean, how is the funding being split? Is it primarily going to the Family Service Agency, and is the piece going to CADA similar to what they've had in the past, or is that increased?
I'd be jumping ahead to say, I would say the therapeutic piece, the mental health piece is the larger piece, so the FSA piece. And then the drug and alcohol, it's not a small piece, but really an important piece of this is the assessment of the student. Is their primary concern a mental health issue, mental illness, mental health, or is it purely drug and alcohol, or is it a dual situation? But yes, I think the larger piece will be the therapeutic mental health piece. But again, the drug and alcohol, it's not like it'll be a small piece, if that makes sense. So
I guess just in relationship to what it is now, it's increasing.
It will be increasing the more pure mental health services, yes.
But I mean, in CADA is going to be increasing
they're doing the drug and alcohol piece, but there's mental health services embedded in that for some students. It's really dependent on each student and what they need.
So in terms of the work that CADA does, is it changing, or is it become, I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
It's changing, yes.
So it's changing to be more integrated into the mental health work?
I would say it's changing in that the curriculum that they're going to deliver and how they deliver it is going to be different. CADA's been providing mental health services through the drug and alcohol all along. But the YSS structure as we know it will not be there. The Reconnecting Youth class will not be there, but new curriculums for students who have need will be used by CADA. And I can bring that to you again on the 22nd for your review of those curriculums.
Yeah, I think it would just be interesting to see how it's changing, how the program's integrating, and what pieces are being added or perhaps being alleviated.
I think that graphic that I talked about earlier, the detailed graphic, will help you all see that as well.
And that might also explain the budget experience.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, Mr. Matsuoka.
I'd like to insert big picture comments. Actually, first a question, Dr. Wagon. May 22nd that's an aggressive timeline. When we've talked about the turnaround on this, but that means board docs have to be done in like
a week.
If we were to delay to June 12th to give you more time to work this through with the agencies, how does that impact the implementation by these partners to staff up? Because that's your reality, is if whatever we're going to do, you've got to build capacity and fast. So I see a lot of head nods like we need to know like 2 months ago today versus the need for the board for, budget reconciliation information. So does everybody understand the tension here is,
I think what I need tonight is the board's blessing to meet with FSA and CADA, to meet with CALM, to start the planning and start figuring out some of these nuts and bolts and have the conversation about the budgeting. That's what I need tonight. We're not asking to sign contracts. We're not there yet. So if I had until the 12th, I could bring them more answers, more complete answers at that time, rather than the 22nd.
Okay, well, I think we're in agreement with that, and then we'll be able to also speak with Mr. Tay on the budget as well. I just think, I think it's really important. We've talked about the importance of moving forward with this. It's just we've got to be able to fund it.
Yes.
To implement it. And so
now let me go to the big picture context, and I've shared this with our cabinet team. So between the two sums of what we spend, 375 elementary, 475 in secondary. Okay, come on, Carrie, you can do math. That's 850,000. So that's what we currently spend. Right, not to do one-to-one comparison. My prior district, we were spending about $800,000, I think, when I left, for a district of 10,000 students. Okay, Milpitas Unified. We're 13,500 is our responsibility of our 17 schools. So we're spending the same as a district of 10,000. Now, let me now weave in my observations. The homelessness data as a reference point, remember I shared in our State of the District speech, 14% of our students are classified as homeless. The impact of poverty and now early life trauma is so much deeper in Santa Barbara than what I saw in, granted, a pretty wealthy county, Santa Clara County. The homelessness rate in Milpitas is 0.3%. And in fact, across, that county, which I know really well, the degree of homelessness and poverty and trauma in early childhood is less in Silicon Valley. And we had a ton of mental health issues, different flavors. I think what we're faced with in Santa Barbara Unified is the impact on 0 to 5 when kids come to us. Man, they've absorbed just so much trauma that we've got little kids that can just barely be in our classrooms. So, I mean, this is a big budget gap, but the need in Santa Barbara it's really deep. And I think our community's got to step up on this. We are primarily a teaching and learning organization, but we have been tasked with the social services for a community. They turn to us, and I'm willing to hold that and receive it, but we've got to have some help from our community. And there's some very generous foundations in this community. I think we will be the lead in terms of creating the picture of services and the financial need. But we can't carry this alone. I know you can help with some of the fundraising, but there's a third partner here, and it's the Santa Barbara community. And I will say the need is deep. And so I'm not surprised at your proposal to address the need. Of course, that secondary number is big, but the need is huge. So just context, okay?
I just want to thank you, Dr. Wagenknecht, for the process. I mean, this has been a challenging process, but also to get to this place where we are of really coming up with a plan, which is really important for our students. And so I think to acknowledge that, and also, I mean, it's a process of figuring out how we go forward and what does it look like. And but what's exciting is that there's opportunity here to help our students and to ensure that we have our students as healthy as they can be. And I think also the connection, again, I go back to the communication piece. This is going to open a whole new level of conversation that hasn't been there, or maybe it has, but in minimal ways, but with more people involved and more people involved in the trenches of really talking it out and having these conversations. I think that's crucial, because I think it's the relationship building is really the key for our students in feeling connected with somebody else that can help them.
Absolutely, thank you.
Can I just add a point with regards to the 0 to 5? I know Lisa and Elena can talk to it too. With regards to the first 5, the community and Selpa have really started to now look at that issue, identifying, doing early identification of those issues really early. And so I know that's not helping this immediate moment, but for the future part, that's a huge piece in building that foundation as we transition our children 0 to 5 to the K through 12 system, how important it is for us to start looking at it now. So you'll see those numbers in the future, but it is definitely on the front line of looking at early identification, not only for the mental health, but other development delays as well that also impact the K through 12 system, really making it a P through 12 system as opposed to here's a separate system here, but how do we ensure that we're working together to build that foundation so by the time they make that transition, have we identified enough to lessen those numbers on the other end, and knowing that those prevention dollars will save us in the end with regards to the intervention dollars. So we're really beginning to look at that as a statewide issue, and now in some of the agencies that we've been funding through our next cycle as part of our strategic plan, looking at that early. It's like I don't know if the timing is just right, or I don't know where in terms of that, but it's now being illuminated in a way that it hasn't been before, that we've really got to focus on that prevention side of it. So just to respond to the 0 to 5, that is an area that we're looking at in a way that we've not looked at, to the depth that we are now.
Absolutely.
And also the focus, when you are focusing this program with elementary, I mean, if we start working early on with elementary, with the students at a young age, just like with 0 to 5, they're going to have the skills and the strategies early on, so that by the time they get to high school, maybe, it won't be as challenging. I mean, it'll be challenging, but they'll have some of this, the skills and scaffolding to deal with the issues, so.
And just one more thing, just when you were just saying that, the other piece that we're looking at is we've had a need in the applications is the parent support. We've had an increased need of parent classes that, again, in the 0 to 5, not only just raising a baby, this person, how we do that, but even how to support them through that, and what do the parents need in that piece. And so that's kind of coming out in the home visitation model, that we're looking at how do we support the parents early with regards to that as well. So it's really, you're going to see that connection in a way, in a bridge, in a way that we've not seen it in the past in terms of that. So it's happening, as you said, it's a mental health issue that's not only just this community, but it is statewide, an issue that's really being raised. I was just at the Advocacy Day in Sacramento, and that was a huge piece of where we've got to go, where does First 5 impacted system in non-traditional ways that we've not done, because we just don't have the level of funding that we had. So how do we then use that funding together to build that bridge and address this issue as well? So.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
So moving forward to agenda item 6, report on workers' compensation positive fund certification. Ms. Jate.
Thank you, board members. So every year we show that we are in Santa Barbara Unified as part of a joint power agency with CISC 1, which means that we are self-insured with a group of people that are in the CISC 1 pool. And this is an annual report that we do. They do an actuarial, the same company that does our actuarials on our other post-employment benefits does this actuarial. And basically what they're saying is that we have enough, this joint power agency has enough money in its CISC pool to still run as an independent or a self-insured workers' comp pool. And so this is just to let you know that it's doing okay, and we will continue being self-insured. We're in compliance.
All right, hallelujah, great. Thank you. So, we're moving forward to coming events. Anyone want to share a coming event that they're attending, or Mr. Paredes Ulloa?
Not in a separate event, but you all coming to Santa Barbara City College next week for our joint board meeting. I would invite you to come by a little bit earlier. I'd love to show you all around and maybe show my office off.
Well, I will do that. Thank you. Anyone else? I know we're about to be entering graduations and promotions and all of these exciting times. So I'm sure we'll see each other passing in the night at different schools. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's such a positive time of year, and everybody, the excitement is really wonderful. And just to hear of the achievements that our students have made, which is really, really wonderful. Any future agenda items? I think you had mentioned to me, Mr. Paredes Ulloa, about a Santa Barbara Education Foundation presentation perhaps in August. And I know that we're going to also be hearing from Ms. Sims-Moten and Ms. Michelle Robertson of the Early Childhood Coordinator of Santa Barbara Unified School District in a kind of joint collaborative presentation. So we're looking forward to that in July. I think that's what has kind of been bandied about. All right, and our next meeting is Tuesday, May 15th, right? Is that right? No, that's our joint special meeting that was just mentioned at 4 o'clock. And then our next regular board meeting will be Tuesday, May 22nd at 6:30.
Can I remind the board that on May 22nd, that's our annual SIPSA, what do we call that, roundtable. You will get the opportunity to, I think review, is it 4? I think it was 4, I don't know, 3 or 4 SIPSAs. So we'll get a schedule out to you. That study session begins at 4 p.m. because we have a 90-minute process so that I think you can get to 4 SIPSAs. We do need an hour for closed session, just given our time of year. So I apologize for bringing you in so early. You all have day jobs. Appreciate your time and commitment to the school district. So 4 o'clock, and we will start getting those SIPSAs out to you soon so that you can read, probably not all of them, but the ones are of interest to you, and we'll get that sign-up doc out to you so that you can pick and choose your schools. And we'll try to grant you the schools that you would like to do. We'll just have to see where your requests fall and maybe have to do some mix and match.
All right, looking forward to that. And unless I have any more comments from my fellow board members, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.